Next item is SP-24-013.
Thank you, Jeanette. Council, we have about 78 speakers on this item, but I have spoken with both the for and against speakers. What we'll do this evening is what we always do. We'll take all of the for and all of the against. The caveat here is because I'm going to give each side a full 12 minutes at the top of their speaker list. And I've also been contacted, especially by those that are in favor of this particular site plan change. They'd prefer to speak in groups rather than every individual speaker. That is fine, because you have all the rules to do that, to combine them all, as long as each individual speaker, whose name I will call at some point during the speaker to make sure they do approve of that and they don't want their time this evening. So with that, I believe we're going to start with Pastor Heather Schott, followed by Kyle Fonville. Each individual will have 6 minutes on behalf of their applicant, and then we'll move through group speakers from there.
Good evening, Council. My name is Heather Schott. I'm the senior pastor of Mercy Culture Church and the founder of the Justice Reform, the organization that is building the Justice Residence. The Justice Residence will be a restoration home for discipling women rescued out of human trafficking. Why do we need the Justice Residences? Here are some stats for you. Dallas-Fort Worth region accounts for 35% of the state's commercial sexual exploitation cases, even though we only have 26% of the state's entire population. 7 out of 10 victims are female, and there are 6.3 million enforced commercial sexual exploitation in the U.S. Yet there are only 33 live-in programs specifically for human trafficking victims in the entire nation, offering a total of 682 beds. Survivors of human trafficking have an 80% chance of being re-victimized if they do not have a safe place to go. The lack of safe places for victims of human trafficking is one of the main reasons why we are losing the battle so badly to ending sex trafficking. The majority of women rescued have no place to go and end up back in bondage being re-trafficked. This is about the worst thing that can happen to a human soul because it kills all hope for freedom, hope for a real life, for a justice system, for humanity. They lose hope with no safe place to go, in which many stop trying to get free for this reason, because they are beaten to a half inch of their life upon returning back after a failed attempt of freedom, or worse. Their child or family member is raped, abused, or even killed in front of them. Their reality is being brutally raped multiple times every single day by multiple individuals. This is happening all around us right now. Women are being enslaved for sex. This is an injustice. Yet the greatest injustice is to do absolutely nothing about it, or worse, to oppose solutions to help restore and redeem the most abused individuals in our society when we are already losing the battle. Those that have opposed us say they are for the rescuing and restoration of victims of human trafficking, yet they have spent their time and money fighting against us and not fighting the issue at hand, which is human trafficking. Action, not words, is what speaks truth. I was asked to bring clarity to these accusations tonight, even though I feel that these are opinions and not valid to our case, since we can legally build on our property, but I do want to help bring clarity for those that need it. I have heard accusation after accusation from the O&A of Oakhurst neighborhood that are lies to hurt our character and our efforts in order to feed their desires of having a neighborhood without a restoration home near it. I have been accused that we don't know what we're doing. Yet we have an entire program put together by trained professionals, including counselors, medical professionals, anti-human trafficking experts, pastors, and survivors. We have trained in the last 3 years 100 advocates so that every survivor has their own advocate. This has never been done before and is an incredible achievement. I've been accused that we have not brought in other professionals and organizations to learn nor hear from them. Yet we have brought in 12 different organizations, including the NET, 821, Treasured Vessels, Bochi's Place, Unbound Now, Rescue Her, Traffic 911, Freedom Shield Foundation, Delivered Fund, Yaku Boyan's Ministries, Sarah Lynn Morgan with Homeland Security, Sheriff Wayburn, and others from the PD that have spoken into our church and organization whom has allowed us to pray over them and sow financially into many of them. I had a picture of all of the events that we had them out to. I'm not sure if the slides are working, but we have only fought for unity and to support other organizations in the city. Many of them are here in the room tonight or submitted letters in support of the Justice residents that could not be here. The Justice residents have been accused of causing more traffic. My colleagues will be responding to this concern due to time. The Justice residents has been accused that it will make our neighborhood unsafe. My colleagues will also be responding to this concern. The Justice residents has been accused of not being a church-related activity. My legal counsel will take a deep dive into this, but let me say for centuries, this is exactly what the church has done, like we heard earlier of another amazing church in the city, and should continue to do for all time. The Bible, the living word of God, says in Isaiah 61, verse 1 and 8, the Spirit of the Lord God is on me because the Lord has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and freedom to the prisoners. And it says this in verse 8, for I, the Lord, love justice. There's Restoration Home that will bind up the brokenhearted, be a place of liberty and freedom for the captives, and will have a chapel in the center of the building for worship and discipleship. This is clearly a church-related activity. God calls his people to bring justice because it pleases him. That's why this place is called the Justice Residence, because we are bringing biblical justice to please our God. Out of the 33 places of restoration in our nation, many are ran by Christians or churches. Two of the most successful centers restoring victims of trafficking are right in the city, like the Justice Residence will be. The first one that's been around for a long time is called the LA Dream Center, which is a church that oversees a large restoration home serving victims of human trafficking and a ministry for the homeless in downtown LA. It was established in 1994 and for 30 years has been transforming lives and serving the city of Los Angeles, California. The other one is New Life Church in Richmond, Virginia, that has multiple large restoration homes for men and women in the downtown area surrounded by neighborhoods, and was established in 1971, running for almost 54 years and serving Richmond, Virginia.
Thank you, Pastor Schott. Our next speaker will be Kyle Fonville. Before Kyle gets started, is there anybody that's about to come in? I just want to make sure we allow them to do that. I know that you're kind of filling up here. Fire Marshal hasn't given me any. Okay, we're good? Okay. Kyle, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Parker. My name is Kyle Fonville. I'm an attorney here in Fort Worth, and I represent Mercy Culture Church. We're here on a site plan amendment, and so I want to get a little bit into the legal background of this. First of all, the proposed use, as you heard, the zoned use for this property is church-related activities. There's no limits on that. It's any church-related activities. The only requirement is a site plan, and that's what we're here asking for today. The proposed use fits within the current zoning, and we have an agreement with the city staff and city attorneys. I want to give a special thanks to Ms. Dana Burdoff, who's worked very hard along with the city attorneys with us. We've worked through this issue, and this proposed use fits within the zoning. The church also consulted with a national law firm who does this, because I don't go in front of the Supreme Court. I don't argue these religious liberties issues. And so we brought them in to give us counsel on what this is. And they wrote a letter. Everybody should have received a copy of the letter. And they reached the same conclusion that there should be no question, and this is First Liberty Institute, there should be no question that the new structure and ministry are church-related activities under our PD 586. Now, here's why. Here's the standard. And this comes from the Fort Worth Court of Appeals. It's a 1999 decision. And they said church merely requires that activities are, one, primarily connected with religious worship, which you just heard. There's going to be a chapel in the Justice Residence. But two, it says, or intended to propagate religious beliefs. And what happened in that case is the church looked at a dance hall, and they said, well, a dance hall that's used for dancing, for barbecues, for fundraising, is that a church? Because it's not connected to the sanctuary. It's on church property, but it's not connected to the sanctuary. The city of Fort Worth actually said, yes, that is a church. The Fort Worth Court of Appeals said, yes, that is a church. And just because there was social events held does not mean it's not part of a church. So that's the standard. What religious beliefs are being propagated with this residence? Well, I can show you one of them. And this is Jesus speaking in Matthew 25. And he says, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me." Then the scripture goes on, and it says, the people standing around asked, "Lord, when were you hungry? When did you need clothes?" And he says, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." In Matthew 28, this is Jesus again speaking. He says, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." So the religious beliefs that are going to be propagated with this facility is we are going to clothe, shelter, feed, and most importantly, disciple the very least of these sisters of Jesus Christ. This is absolutely 100% a church-related activity. And the reason I have to go through this, okay, the reason I have to go through this is because the Opposition Neighborhood Association has hired a Dallas attorney to come in and challenge our religious beliefs. She went to zoning and said, well, what's really a church-related activity? Should it be all ministries at the church? It shouldn't be all ministries. Let's say, this was literally her argument, let's say that it should only be Sunday school classrooms and a fellowship hall. That's what she told your zoning commission, and that's what partly the zoning commission ruled on. I'm here to tell you that the United States Supreme Court said a government cannot act in a manner that passes judgment or presupposes the illegitimacy of religious beliefs. What does that mean? It means this government cannot tell a church like Mercy Culture what a legitimate religious belief is. And the great thing about this constitutional principle, it rings true regardless of the religion, regardless of the organization, and regardless of the thoughts and feelings and inconveniences of the local landowners. Now, I'll tell you, you heard the Hungdao Buddhist Temple application earlier. They want to do things that don't fit within Fort Worth zoning. They want to build these stupas in the middle of their facility. It is not up to me and it is not up to the city to tell them that's not a legitimate religious activity. Pastor Nettles, let's say your congregation wants to expand Purpose-Driven Ministries campus to propagate a religious belief that you and your congregation have. It is not up to me to tell you what a legitimate religious belief is, and it's not up to this body, respectfully. The same laws that protect you to do what you want and the religious use on your property are the same laws that protect Mercy Culture Church. And so we're asking this body to please consider a site plan amendment, not a zoning change, and to approve this. Now, very, very quickly, one of our, another thing our experts has made clear under the federal case law is you cannot, if there is a lesser restrictive alternative, the city cannot say no. And so I want to propose, and I got these directly from an officer at in the transportation department. Here's what you do on Oakhurst Scenic Drive to stop parking on the shoulder: cables, rocks, bricks in the sidewalk. These are less restrictive alternatives to saying no. So we ask that you do not say no to this, but to
Thank you,
explore
Mr. Fonville.
these
Your
lesser restrictive
time has
alternatives.
expired.
Thank you, Mayor.
Our next group will be Kaylee Morrow. And I believe Ms. Morrow had a video to play. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
At the very end, I'll cue the video of
Okay.
Sheriff.
That'll give them a chance to get it ready.
City Council, it's an honor to be before you today. My name is Kaylee Morrow. I'm the Director of the Justice Reform and a pastor at Mercy Culture Church. Tonight, I present to you 6,343 signatures signed in this petition for the Justice residence to be built. I'll hand them to the secretary right after I'm completing my speech. Hundreds of emails have been sent in. We have letters printed for you tonight to share their why for the Justice residences. These letters are filled with doctors, educators, professionals from the anti-human trafficking industry, Parents, victims, local business owners, every race, age, and background are in this stack asking for the Justice residences to be built. 48 of those letters are of support from residents that live in Oakhurst neighborhood. I want to present to you the written statements of those who have come out to support this project tonight. These individuals have not only said, no, not in my city to the sex trafficking industry, but they're actually doing something to stop this injustice in the city of Fort Worth. The Justice residence has been accused of causing more traffic. If you know about those who are being trafficked, you know that they own close to nothing to their name, nevertheless, a car. It's interesting that the neighborhood didn't pay a lawyer to stop the 400 units in a giant apartment building off of the main entrance of their neighborhood that has over 400 cars there. This is not about the traffic because we know that the Justice residence is off a beaten path in the back corner of our property will not cause more traffic. The Justice residence has also been accused that it will make the neighborhood unsafe. This statement goes to show how naive and uneducated we are about the injustice of human trafficking. What is attracting traffickers is anywhere moms and children are. This is happening in Targets and schools and parking lots, skating rinks, malls, the biggest one, social media, and our very own homes. This is everywhere. We have trafficking happening all around us in our suburban neighborhoods, around Oakhurst neighborhood, and I promise doing nothing will not stop this injustice of human trafficking. But building the Justice residence will repel trafficking and crime. When we moved into the building in 2020, there was crime all along Oakhurst Scenic Drive happening, but now because of the traffic, the things that are taking place every single day there, people, the $16 million of investment we put into the church and the school, including security, crime has been pushed out and the value of this neighborhood has gone up. We have truly invested a lot into this property, the city, and we should be entrusted to continue to invest into our district and city. So no, the Justice residence will not attract traffickers and will not put fear into anyone except the fear into our enemy's camp, the traffickers. Put yourself in the trafficker's shoes. They will not be coming to a place where it has 24/7 security and they wouldn't be going to where all of our security is taking place. If I was a bad guy, I would not want to go anywhere near this place. The accusations, the saying that the PD does not support us, we have had many meetings with all of them, and I would love to share a letter of support from our very own Sheriff Wayburn, who is an expert in human trafficking, and his video of support.
Greetings and Merry Christmas. Madam Mayor and City Council, I appreciate you receiving this communication. I'd prefer to be there in person, but however, I couldn't make that happen today. I do want to let you know I'm in full support of Mercy Culture and this center that they're building for human trafficking victims. I think it's something that the faith-based communities should be doing and do it better than government can. The scourge of the earth today in our society is human trafficking. And I believe that not only Fort Worth, but Tarrant counties are leaders in not only deterring it and stopping it and holding people accountable and rescuing victims, but I think this asset will help us continue to lead the nation in the fight against this modern day human slavery. I think what they're doing is noble. And for the last several years, every church that I've spoke at, which have been many, I have encouraged those churches to get off the bench and get in the game in regards to human trafficking. And Mercy Culture just simply stepped up to the plate and they are delivering. We have many, many fine organizations that are helping out in human trafficking. And it is my belief that these organizations will blend together, work together for the betterment of victims, and be able to bring more people out of that horrific slavery than before. It's a great asset, and I urge you to absolutely pass it. This also reminds me of the early 90s when mental health homes were blending into neighborhoods, and they had these adult mental health homes where several people were there, and people were very, very anxious about it and concerned about it. Well, that was 30 years ago, and they're working out just fine, as well as many, many foster group homes have blended into subdivisions all around Tarrant County, and they are good neighbors. And I think that will continue here. And I think Mercy Culture will be good neighbors to that neighborhood. Appreciate you listening to me. Thank you, and God bless.
You're next. Our next group is Les Cody.
If you register to stand with attempts to appease the Oakhurst Neighborhood Association, I invite you to join me now. Good evening, members of the City Council, Madam Mayor. My name is Les Cody, and I serve as a pastor with Mercy Culture Church and as a board member of the Justice Reform. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening as I stand in full support of the construction of the Justice Residence. While I am deeply passionate about this issue, I am not here to re-argue the need for this facility. I'm here to address the ongoing objections of the Oakhurst Neighborhood Association and to outline our extensive yet unsuccessful efforts to address their concerns. For nearly 2 years, the Justice Reform has maintained an open line of communication with the ONA. We have worked tirelessly to educate Oakhurst residents on the merits, scope, security measures, aesthetics, and other details of this project. We've employed every available means of outreach, including social media, traditional media outlets, emails, mailers, door hangers, in-person presentations, Q&A sessions, and attendance at various neighborhood meetings. Despite these efforts, our attempts to address their concerns and provide answers to their questions have been met with consistent opposition. Our most recent effort occurred this past Tuesday, December 3rd, in a meeting with City Council member Jeanette Martinez and representatives from city staff, the president of the ONA, their legal counsel, myself, and other representatives from the Justice Reform. During this hour-long meeting, we answered their questions in great detail. As I did in our meeting, allow me to summarize their objections into 3 primary concerns. Number 1, parking and traffic. As has been noted, the women residing at the Justice Residence will not be allowed to have cars on the property. Additionally, on-site staff at any given moment will be minimal, and this is not a come-and-go facility. The project will not cause additional traffic or parking issues. In fact, it will add 18 additional parking spaces to the property. Number 2 was light pollution. We provided a detailed lighting plan demonstrating an anticipation of an increase in light pollution. Parking lot lighting will match the current church lighting, while building lighting will feature a soft residential design. The aesthetic integrity of the property is critical to us, reflecting both our commitment to excellence and our respect for the dignity of the women who will call the Justice Residence home. This facility will not only be impactful, but also a physically beautiful addition to our city. When asked if we had sufficiently addressed their concerns on these 2 topics, ONA representatives confirmed that we had. And that brings us to their 3rd major concern and the biggest of all, and that is of security. We have presented expert testimony, letters, and video of support from high-ranking law enforcement officials and comprehensive security plans. This plan includes significant financial investment in physical security measures, professionally designed and monitored systems, coordination with the Fort Worth Police Department, as well as 24-hour on-site security. Despite addressing these concerns, the ONA representatives could not articulate any unresolved security issues, stating only that they believe the project is inherently unsafe. As an example of the alleged unsafe nature of the project, they have consistently pointed to the number of beds. At one point in our meeting, I asked them if there was a number of beds at which they would support the project, and they had no answer. It is clear that no level of compromise would resolve the ONA's objections. Their opposition is not rooted in specific concerns, but rather in the project itself. This is consistent with their long-standing resistance to any further development of this property. You will undoubtedly hear many particular points of opposition from various members of the community tonight. Council members, please know that if we were to acquiesce to every single one of their demands, it would change nothing. If it has 100 beds or 5, if we had 18 parking spaces or 118, if we flood the facility with lighting or have none at all, the opposition would remain unchanged. The facts are, this is a neighborhood association that has opposed any further development of this property and attempted to dictate how it is to be used for decades. Prior to Mercy Culture's purchase of the property, the previous church, Calvary, also faced relentless opposition from the ONA over every proposed development, ranging from building expansions to additional signage to minor changes to parking lights. This is an incredible project. As has been mentioned by our attorney, it falls well within the scope of church-related activities for which the property is zoned. It is well-funded, meticulously planned, beautifully designed, and fulfills a critical need in our community. It will be a beacon of hope, serve as a source of love, and be something the citizens of Fort Worth can be proud is representing our great city. Thank you.
Our next group is Erica Cristinelli. If I probably butchered her name, I apologize. You please correct me.
Okay, Mayor. I have these that they told me that I could hand out to.
If you just hand them to the City Secretary's office, we can take them. Thank you.
If you signed up to stand with a former abused, would you mind standing with me? Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Erica, and it is an honor to share my testimony and story. 4.5 years ago today, I was homeless and living in a women's shelter a few blocks from the church. I was slapped. I had chunks of my hair ripped out. I had black eyes. I had bruises on my neck in shape of handprints from being strangled. I was forced to do things that I didn't want to do, but I didn't want to die or be beat. On May 21st of 2020, the Arlington Police Department rescued me from a hotel where I was being abused. Then I was taken to a safe house. I was hospitalized for many days. Several weeks later, and after a lot of no's, we don't accept women that are in her condition, the safe house finally found a place for me. I was taken to a women's shelter in Fort Worth, Texas, where I lived for 6 months. During this time, I was asked to go to church. It was Mercy Culture Church. My life completely changed. I began serving first as an usher, then as a greeter, and then many other places. I was accepted for who I was, given a chance at a new start, a new life. Being with the community at Mercy Culture helped me to heal. I stayed in this abuse because I thought there was nowhere to go. The Justice residents will give women through exactly what I went through, a place to live, not just a few days, for 1 to 3 years. I will be there to support, encourage, and love these women when they come in. After training with the Justice Reform for a year, I graduated in November of 2022 as a Justice Reform advocate. I am 4.5 years clean. I am allowed to make my own decisions. I have a job. I have my own car. And just so you know, I didn't have a car for 10 years. Somebody that is being abused, they don't have cars. We can barely afford to eat. So that's just something that I did want to add in there. I have a job, I have my own car, I have a beautiful home. I pay all my bills on my own. And I am surrounded by people that truly love me and encourage me. I want to thank Pastor Landon and Pastor Heather. From the bottom of my heart, they have spiritually been my mother and father from the very moment I walked into Mercy Culture. I lost my parents many years ago. So having both of them in my life, loving and encouraging me, has changed my life. I love you both so much. Thank you for everything you have done for me. I wouldn't be where I was if it weren't for you, Mercy Culture, and of course, Jesus. He gets all the glory. I live in freedom. Give other women a chance to live in freedom. Let the Justice residence be built. Thank you so much. It was an honor.
It's an honor to see her come to life like that. It's been a beautiful
Just for
process.
clarity, I think there were 2 minutes and 40 seconds left on that. May I ask your name, please, for the
Yes,
record?
my
and
name
keep-
is Evelyn Luciano.
Thank you. Continue.
Yes, and I'm from the city of Philadelphia and moved to the great city of Fort Worth 6 years ago. It is such an honor to be in this city. I personally have my own story, but today I'm focusing on my experience as working as a professional in this field of social work and criminal justice for 18 years of my life. I've worked with children, teens, and adults who were all victims of some form of violence, sexual abuse, and drug addictions. I've also worked with their abusers. I've heard a lot of concerns that have been shared from years ago with the Oakhurst neighborhood, and I want to speak to some of those concerns. I've worked in several inpatient residences, care facilities. Within these 18 years of working with them, I have been in many different facilities, and I want to say out of the 6,570 days I worked with them, only one crime has been committed in the neighborhood around, and it was not located in the homes around. It was located at a store down the street. I want to say that that fear that has been placed into the community is not accurate, and there is no evidence around it. I want you to know as well that the traffickers will not come to this location, as have stated before, because they have an assignment and they're not coming to harass the neighbors. They have an agenda, and it is not them. I want you to know that I also personally understand the need for safe housing for these victims. I've had to stand in front of many women that have needed help and look them in the face and say, we do not have a place for you. That is the worst thing I've had to do in 18 years of when someone wants help and you have not a location to send them because there is not enough housing. I know for a fact that these women, when they're told this, end up going back into the cycle of abuse. This actually is a need that we needed years ago. And so I stand before you today and I'm pleading with you as a council team to say yes to this residence and also the need for it to be on a church property. Just as Erica, there are many individuals that have testimonies of coming out of the system that needed a church body and a community to help them walk through, and they are living in freedom. We need this justice residence, and we need it on the Mercy Culture property. Thank you so much.
Our next group will be, 45 seconds left, please. Thank you.
I'm Tessa Duke. I'm a survivor of human trafficking. It has happened to me 3 times from age 14 to 30. I felt alone and like I had no one to talk to and nowhere to go. After feeling like there was something wrong with me for most of my life, I actually learned from the justice reform that those who have been trafficked have a higher risk of being trafficked again. I never knew that, and it helped comfort me and set me free from lies I believed that it was always my fault. For years of my life, I wanted to die, and I had no community to pull me out of it. Jesus changed everything for me. Today, I'm a mom of 5 with my 6th grandbaby on the way. Thank you, God. Because of God restoring every area of my life, I'm able to help mentor many women and point them to Jesus. He restored everything. Being a part of
Thank
Mercy
you.
Culture
I hate
has
to
changed
cut
my
you
life.
off into
Thank you.
Thank you very much for speaking. Our next group is Emmanuel Okada. Emmanuel. The next group after that will be Jasmine Wheeler's group.
If you registered to stand with Oakhurst residents in support of the Justice Residences, please join me now. Before I start, Mayor Maddie Parker, City Council, we honor you. Honor is assigning heaven's value. Your seat, your voice, your vote is weighty and it's felt. I wholeheartedly believe that the Lord has placed you in this seat for such a time as this. My name is Emmanuel Cota Flores. I am a first-generation Hispanic. My parents migrated from Mexico to the U.S. years ago. Living on a border town for most of my life, I have seen the negative effects of what happens when a city does not stand against human trafficking. As a resident of the Oakhurst neighborhood, it is a 30-second drive from my house to Mercy Culture Church. I have never been late to an appointment across the town. I've never been stuck in traffic or missed tasks. Never once has my day-to-day life been affected by the events or gatherings that Mercy Culture holds. Both as a resident of Oakhurst and a Mercy Culture member, I can clearly see the misinformation that the Oakhurst neighborhood has received and now shared on their social media Group pages, I've seen the fear spread and the lack of context given. The justice residences, they're not a halfway house. It's stabilization for the healing, restoration, equipping, and reintroducing women as successful citizens. It will not attract crime. You heard it. It will push crime away. Majority of the women rescued don't have vehicles. They can't own it. So the justice residences will not cause any further traffic. I want to make it perfectly clear that the Oakhurst Neighborhood Association does not speak nor represent all of Oakhurst. They are not the final say. They will communicate that there are many members that are not, they will communicate that many of their members are not against human trafficking, yet they do not support a building that will see victims of human trafficking restored? That doesn't make sense. I and many others that live in the neighborhood are in full support of the justice residences being built. We want to partner with you, Mayor Maddie Parker, with you, council members, and the city of Fort Worth to see the end of human trafficking in our city. I believe that Fort Worth will be a pioneer of how to push back against human trafficking. Scripture says a city built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on the stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. I believe that Fort Worth can be that city. Fort Worth can be the first in a new wave of rescue and restoration across the U.S. for victims of human trafficking. I now have a letter here from Dr. Kim Higgins. She could not be here tonight due to leg surgery. And this is what she wrote. I live less than 1 mile away from Mercy Culture Church. It would be an honor to partner with the Justice Reform to establish a healing sanctuary for human trafficking victims. Everyone wants to help, but no one wants it in their backyard. Guess what? It is in our backyard. I am more concerned about the traffic crime noise, which is accompanied by 500 apartments being built down the street, than a small amount of traffic that is in the care for 100 victims that it will bring. I imagine property value would be more affected by high-density housing than a beautiful state-of-the-art facility tucked away in the church's property at the end of the street. Thank you.
How you doing? Thank you for having us today. Thank you for stewarding the job the Lord has bestowed on you guys. I am a resident of Oakhurst. I also work and attend Mercy Culture. For 20 years, I was a New York City police officer. The only help I could provide was sending them to city shelters. 3 weeks later, you see them back out. We started calling it the bologna sandwich and coffee, because it appeared that's what New York City did for these ladies. The first time I heard about this building, it brought me back to my days in New York City. And I was like, wow, why didn't they think about this before? You can't help them with a minute. You gotta have them for a while to work on them, because although they're being hurt, that's their family. If they have nothing else to lean on, that's what they go back to. I really thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jose Manuel Covarrubias, and I am asking you for your support in building the justice residences. I was born and raised on the Mexican border and saw firsthand on the effects of the atrocity of human trafficking. There are a few things that are more frightening than a family member or friend that goes missing and knowing that you're more than likely never going to see them again. Even when they escape, the appropriate help is not available, and they are likely to go back into their situations or end up dead, and it would be foolish for us to not think that we have the same issue in Fort Worth. This is an opportunity for all of us to be a forerunner in the fight to save our mothers, our daughters, our sisters, and any child or woman enslaved.
Thank you. Our next group is Jasmine Wheeler, followed by Jocko Buens, and I apologize if I've butchered that also.
If you're registered to stand with the highlighting of the racial impact of trafficking, please join me now. Hello, City Council, Mayor Maddie Parker. My name is Jasmine Wheeler, and I've been a citizen of Fort Worth, Texas for 6 years. I currently stand on the North Central Texas HIV Planning Council and the Justice Reform Advisory Board, and it's an honor to serve our community. Any civic engagement is to be celebrated and honored. I'm not gonna lie, I have so much more respect for all of you after seeing how long you've been here today. I'm sure you're hungry, you probably want some Doritos. I should have brought you something. Thank you for serving our city. But I just wanna say, any civic engagement as you're doing is celebrated, it's honored. But I imagine that you embarked on this journey because you've authentically wanted to make a difference in the city of Fort Worth and in our great nation. With that being said, Texas is currently the #1 state for sex trafficking. In a 2-year review of all suspected human trafficking incidents across the country, 94% of sex trafficking victims were female, 40% were Black, and 24% were Latinos. According to the Department of Justice, there are approximately 40.3 million victims of human trafficking, and of those, 24.18 million are minorities. Every single one of them is a daughter. Every single one of them has a name. Every single one of them is deserving of our fight for them. Despite the racial tension that has swept our nation, Fort Worth is thankfully a very diverse city, and we all want it to stay that way. That means we must fight for the victims of slavery today. And that means that when we fight for these victims, we are fighting for every race's dignity, honor, and freedom. As far as I'm concerned, this all boils down to one thing. Will you be known as a leader in our city who did everything in their power to end sex trafficking, or someone who refused to move the needle forward towards the ending of modern-day slavery in this generation and in our city? I'm here today to declare my support for the Justice Residences. Thank you.
Mayor Parker, City Council. My name is Will Ford III. I'm pastor at Mercy Culture East Fort Worth, and I'm a proud Fort Worth native. And like y'all, I love our city. That's why we've all been here so long, right? I grew up here. My family has a rich history connected to American slavery. We have a 200-year-old kettle pot that's been passed down from generation to generation in my family. Used by the slaves in my family. They used it for cooking. They used it for washing clothes, but secretly, they used it to muffle their voices in the prayer meetings that they had for freedom. That kettle pot has been passed down to me and often reminds me of the courage and commitment, not only my forefathers, but also everyone who answered cries for freedom that we enjoy today. Yet while we celebrate legalized slavery ending in America in 1865, today's sex trafficking dilemma begs the question, how could those prayers be considered fully answered when global slave trade is so large and bigger than ever before? Unfortunately, there are prayers today that need to be answered from those trapped in modern-day slavery in our city. This is why I'm speaking to you regarding the Justice Residence in Fort Worth. That is going to be a safe place for victims of sex slavery and human trafficking. Globally, over 27 million people are still trafficked in sex slavery and human trafficking. We've already heard that in 2023, the state of Texas has over 300,000 that were trafficked, and 35% of those were just in the DFW area alone. And according to Traffic911.com, Black children comprise 53%, listen, 53% of all juvenile prostitution arrests are African-American children, more than any other racial group. So there's another cry for freedom today. And the Justice Residence is being raised up to become an answer to prayers for freedom and restoration. I believe prayers that my ancestors prayed were not just for the ending of slavery in 1865, but for the ending of slavery here today as well. Will you not only join with their prayers, but also take decisive action for freedom today? Mayor Parker and the council, I believe this is a great opportunity for you to be part of making history and aiding and bringing an end to a prevalent catastrophe that is undermining our progress and destroying our communities. That's why I believe the Justice Residence is an answer to prayer. A wonderful city could be a fort of worth that could house a place of refuge, that could bring restoration and healing to the lives of so many that have been swept up in this horrible injustice. Will you help? With your help, we can see the Justice Residence become a reality and a safe haven for so many trapped in modern slavery today. Winston Churchill said it like this. He said, "History will be kind to me, for I intend to write it." Together, let's write history together and be a catalyst for healing and transformation in our city. Thank you.
I just want to add one thing really quick. Another argument that's going to come up is that why don't we just put this someplace else? That's a fear-based argument because these girls need proximity to schools, they need proximity to grocery stores, they need proximity to the places that they're going to get care, and they're going to receive the help they need as well as to be reintegrated into society. I just want to make that point.
Thank you. Our next group will be Jocko Buyens. He's going to help me out with that one.
For those who registered to stand with me, please do stand now. Honorable council members and Mayor Parker, thank you for your time.
Please pronounce your last name for me.
Boyens.
Thank you.
I'm here tonight to serve one purpose, to draw lines and delineate between what the Justice Residence is and what it is not. What qualifies me to speak on this matter is 30 years in combating child sexual exploitation. When I was 18 years old in 1994, as a citizen then of South Africa, my sister was trafficked. She was 12 years old. It took us 6 years to rescue Ilanka. I know firsthand that it took 18 years to see that life restored. 3 suicide attempts after rescue. And the predominant factor was no place to go. They immigrate to the United States, the land of the free, the home of the brave. 3 weeks after 9/11, I show up where a country is united. A country looks at an enemy and says, not here, not now. But we have forgotten. We have forgotten that there is an enemy. His name is Satan. There is an enemy with friends who walk among us. Today we have a plight called human trafficking with more slaves than ever before in history. I'm a proud American citizen. I love the city of Fort Worth. I'm here tonight because I'm hopeful that for once, after 30 years of fighting this fight, a city can set a stake in the ground for the world to see how you do this and how you do it right. I want to read you a quote from Ilanka, my sister, who could not be here tonight. As a trafficking survivor, I can personally testify to the profound importance of a faith-centered community in the journey towards healing. Healing begins with stability, a safe and nurturing environment when broken lives can begin to be rebuilt. You cannot heal without the community support. The Justice Residence is not a drop-in center. The Justice Residence is not a respite. The Justice Residence is not an emergency shelter. What is an emergency shelter? When we rescue victims, and we rescued a victim 2 days ago from your city, where do we take her immediately? Normally it's the hospital. Most of those victims have some sort of a substance abuse problem. They go to facilities. This is not the Justice Residence. The Justice Residence is a place of stability. It's a home. I'm proud to serve on the Justice Residence Board, and I also serve on the National Institute for Shelter Care's advisory board. And we did a study of 2,000 cases. And in 2,000 cases of human trafficking, here's the number. 22 to 47% of all trafficking cases in America, with Texas being 30%, is familial trafficking. It's the family trafficking the child who then grows up to become an adult traffic victim, which means that victim has never had a home. That victim has never known stability. That victim has never had resources. To build a residence that is a home, not a shelter, that has resources across the parking lot, with a church that is on fire, pouring into its community, a church that loves this city, a church that loves this state. I do not know of another residence on earth, and we have sowed into 172 of these shelters around the world. I do not know of another one on earth that has the amount of resources and the proximity to create a home. So I'm going to go silent for a couple seconds. That's the sound of peace. That's the sound a survivor does not hear. They live in fight or flight. They're re-traumatized. They don't need a place. They need a home. The Justice Residence is going to be a home. When you connect a church to a shelter, the success rate rises by 60%. 87% of all success stories in trafficking come from faith-based organizations. This one will set a precedent. Alicia Bush is here tonight from Treasured Vessels. Alicia has taken in survivors that we helped rescue with your own PD, with your sheriff. I know that Alicia would love more resources. I know that Alicia would love a 2,000, 3,000 member church to say, can we do art therapy? Can we speak into the lives of these women? Can we prophesy over them? Can we teach them skills? Can we help them with a GED? You've got an army saying, we want to help you, Fort Worth. I'm asking you, let them. Those who oppose this have to ask a serious question. What will you say when you stand in front of Jesus? And he asks you, what did you do with what I gave you? Because that day's coming. Thank you very much.
Our next group will be Sean Turner, followed by Chuck Reyes.
Jacob Williams is incredibly succinct and powerful with his words. My name is Sean Turner. I'm a business owner. I'm a veteran. I'm a father. Our business, and I'm joined here with many other business owners and many in the overflow rooms and downstairs as well who are staying with me. Our business is incredibly involved here in Fort Worth. We're in a lot of the professional associations, and although we're licensed in 45 states, we have thousands and thousands of clients here in Fort Worth. And so I know that many of them, when I spoke with them today that I was coming, they were incredibly moved. And there's just trying to paint a picture that there's support outside this room. But the Justice Reform is not here asking for money. They're not here asking for anything other than a site change. That's very simple. And they're just asking for a place to create healing, hope, and restoration to occur. So I have two questions for you. If not now, then when? If not here, then where? If your daughter, sister, or friend were to find themselves in a situation needing services of the Justice Reform, you would be scouring the country to find a place to help them. To what lengths would you go to make sure that they were cared for, loved on, and restored? By this point, you've heard all sorts of the different accusations and objections that have been paraphrased by members of and supporters of the Justice Reform. Traffic being too high, yet there's massive apartment buildings that have been approved and constructed within half a mile. Where was the objections then? There was none. Increased crime, yet the church that's sponsoring this project, Mercy Culture, has 24/7 trained security. On weekends, they have multiple police officers who can attest to the security provided by them and the church. The residents of Oakhurst have made it clear that they don't want this project in their backyard, yet they're the ones touting love is love from signs posted in their yard. Throughout our city, we often hear these messages of inclusivity, compassion, and the idea that love is love. These are ideals that resonate deeply with many, but love, true love, isn't just a slogan or sentiment. It's an action. It's standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves. Mercy Culture Church has proven their ability to steward well by revitalizing a deteriorating building, pouring millions of dollars in their building and the adjacent school, providing millions of meals to hungry residents of Fort Worth, and caring for residents in need by providing clothes, gift cards to single moms during Christmas, and many other unnoticed acts of service. This restoration home is an opportunity for Fort Worth to lead by example, a tangible way to demonstrate that this city values justice, compassion, and restoration. Not only does this initiative offer a chance for healing and hope, but it also provides a pathway to empowerment through employment. I, along with many other business leaders in this room, are committed to extending career opportunities to these survivors in our businesses. These women will not graduate to be left on the streets. They will graduate from a program to be strong, smart, and productive citizens. You hold the power to make that possible. I urge you to think about the legacy you want to leave as leaders of this city. Tonight, you have a chance to do something extraordinary, to take a stand against human trafficking and the restoration of lives. This is not just about a building, it's about hope and transformation. So I ask again, if not now, then when? If not here, then where? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Matt Albrecht. I own a restaurant business right here in Fort Worth. I employ around 100 people and serve 15,000 guests per week through my restaurant. I just share that context because I'm invested in this city. More importantly, I'm married to my wife, Michelle, and we have 5 sons ranging from 11 to 2, and I've lived in Fort Worth for over 5 years now. I love Fort Worth. I chose to raise my family in Fort Worth. And I'm invested, like I said, in this city, and I want it to thrive. I'm here in support of the building of the Justice Residences because I believe building these residences is a solution to a problem that has been in our backyard for far too long. As a citizen of Fort Worth, it would be wrong for me to idly sit by and not share my why. We're talking about building of a residence for women being rescued out of sex trafficking, women that are sold for sex multiple times a day, women that have experienced some of, if not the worst abuse, neglect, and atrocities that our society has outside of the womb. This is sick, this is pure evil, and the justice reform is trying to get these women a home so they can be truly rescued from this vicious cycle, not just taken off the streets for a few days. Anyone with an ounce of compassion understands the reality. When I shared with my 11-year-old son that I was going to be briefly speaking in front of the city council, he quipped back without any other context, just tell them to put themselves in the woman's shoes. If you found out there was a restoration home coming and then you found out that the government wouldn't allow it, it would be devastating. It's that simple. Put yourself in their shoes. Again, I love Fort Worth. Let's catch a vision. The idea of being able to build the first residence of its kind here in this great city is an honor and a privilege that I want our great city to champion, not waffle on because of some political pressure and certainly not some traffic concerns. This resistance this organization has endured because of what can only be seen as politics is unacceptable. You each were elected by citizens of Fort Worth to represent them. What are you going to do, right or wrong? You will be held accountable for your vote. We have a chance to do something really special here in Fort Worth and be an example to the whole state and nation.
Of our time. Thank you. Our next speaker. Our next speaker is Chuck Reyes.
If you're registered to stand with parents fighting human trafficking, please join me and come up. Good evening, Mayor Maddie Parker and members of City Council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. It's an honor to be here with you and to work together to build this city of Fort Worth. My name is Chuck Reyes, and I'm a proud resident of Fort Worth. Standing beside me is my wife, my son, my beautiful daughter, Leah. As you know, Fort Worth in North Texas has had increases of sex trafficking crimes over the years and this year alone. One which I'm specifically reminded of. The case of Keith Sentmore. Maybe you know who he was. He was arrested and charged with child trafficking here in the city of Fort Worth. Police interviewed 16 possible victims before finding and rescuing the 16-year-old girl. As a father of my daughter, my baby girl, who's standing here beside me. I can't imagine what it would be like if my own daughter was that victim. I can't imagine her losing her innocence, being used, being raped, and taken advantage of. I can't imagine looking into her eyes, knowing that I couldn't save her, that I couldn't protect her, that dad couldn't be the one to stand in the gap. City Council, I want you to imagine that. What if this were our children? Maybe you're a father, maybe you're a mother, maybe you're a grandparent. What if this was your child? Where would they go? Where would they turn to? And who would help them? Mayor Maddie Parker and City Council, this is why we need the Justice Residents. This isn't for the justice reform. This isn't for Mercy Culture Church. This isn't for Heather or Landon Schott. This is for the lives of young women, victims, and those who have been raped, abused, and treated as nothing more than sex objects. This is not about anything but their lives. Together, and when I say together, not Mercy Culture Church and us, you, City Council, and us, your faith-based community here in the city, us together, we can partner to answer the cry of injustice. We can answer the cry that is in the streets. I applaud the efforts of Fort Worth. I applaud your efforts, City Council. Our community awareness programs and law enforcement initiatives, but there does remain a gap. Where do they go? Again, if this were your child, if that 16-year-old girl were your daughter, what would you do? Would you build a residence, or would you just pass it over? I urge this council to take action. Let's fight together for our city. Together, we can help survivors rebuild their future. So I thank you. Sincerely, I thank you. And I know and trust that we together will make this future better. Thank you.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Katie. I've been in education for 15 years, 11 of those in a high school in Fort Worth ISD. I'm coming today, one, to say, Mayor Parker, I want to celebrate you because I saw you stand in front of the school board and advocate for the students in Fort Worth ISD to increase their test scores and get rid of the deficit in the reading literacy. I appreciate you for doing that. I stood with you in that and agree with you in that. As an educator in Fort Worth ISD, I remember having conversations where we talked about if only the parents would partner with us, we think we could solve this. If only the parents would do their part, then maybe we could really solve the issue that we're having. And I believe that as well, because partnership with families is excellent. But in my experience in Fort Worth ISD, with the students that I served and the families that I served, there were lots of walls that would block that from happening. How can a mom partner with the school to help her kiddo when her kiddo comes home and has to sit in the breezeway of their apartment complex to wait for their mom to finish working while they were inside turning tricks for money? How can a family partner with their kiddo when the kiddo comes home and sees a neighbor's child, toddler, on the balcony and says, I know I have to go help them? Why do you have to help them? Because when their mom's working, I watch them. When their mom's being prostituted day in and day out, my students told me it was normal for them to go to strip clubs on the weekend, right in the place where pimps are ready to groom them. How can they do their homework when they spend all of their time creating pornographic content to post online? How? I understand completely that Oakhurst has an issue with the traffic. I get it.
Thank
However,
you for your time. I'm sorry it's expired. Thank you for speaking. Thank you. Okay, I think that's the last of group speakers. I'm going to go through this to make sure any individual that signed up has ceded their time to groups. I think that they have, but if that's going to change anything, I just need you to be vocal. And if somebody down in the basement area pipes up, we'll figure that out. Juan Martinez, Veronica McCree, Carrie Monroe, Alan Armendariz, Brittany Toomer, Eric Christian, Gabrielle Robertson, Eric Richardson, Dakota Lopez, Mark Fulmer, Humberto de la Rocha, Rebecca Williams, Serena Cotton, Bosa Adesi, Rashawn Richards, Capri Sherman, William Ford III, Destiny Aguila, Lindsay Rivero, Jed Carlson, Maria Bennett, Amanda Azuna, Bonifacio Riddle, Destiny Alvarez, Grayson Wheeler, Leanna Onstadt, Haley Gilbert, Melinda Akwaski, Infinity Wallace, Christopher Kima, Heather Schott, who already spoke, Kyle Fonville, who did speak, Les Cody on behalf of a group, Evelyn Luciano, Emmanuel Cotta, Christina Cotta, Austin Reyes, Jasmine Wheeler, who was on here on behalf of a group, William Ford, Sean Turner, Matt Albrecht, Melissa Sanchez, Chuck Reyes on behalf of a group, Vanessa Reyes, Katie Fonville, Tia Gonzalez. Okay, is that Tia Gonzalez? Is there an issue? No. Okay. Tia Gonzalez, Alicia Bush, Carla Shellis, Kaylee Monroe, Tessa Duke, Jordan Postelli, Erica Cristinelli, who did speak. And I think that's all I missed. Did anybody want to speak that did not? Yes, sir.
I'm going to yield my time to Pastor Lennon.
And can you give your name for the record, please?
Eric Richardson.
Okay. Mr. Richardson is leading his time. That's fine. 3 minutes, please. Thank you. And then we'll move in. Before Mr. Schott speaks, we're going to move into the next set of speakers. And I believe I'm correct in telling you, next up, in case anybody's outside. Well, I'll just let the Oakhurst neighborhood, whoever's that first 6 minutes that wants to speak first will be first. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Were you one of the speakers that wanted to speak? Okay. Okay.
I'm going to invite everybody that wanted to speak, that didn't get a chance to, and then everybody that is in support of the Justice residents, just go ahead and stand with me as I close this out.
And I'm going to ask you to stand. Thank you for a moment. And then I'm going to have you sit back down so the fire marshal doesn't get nervous. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. We want to keep the meeting going.
Thank you, Mayor Maddie, and the councilmen for being here today. We appreciate you. All of the police officer, the fire marshal, everybody that's been serving, we appreciate you as well. As you saw all these people standing here and hundreds out there, it's a bunch of good Samaritans that are standing. We get that phrase good Samaritan from Jesus in Luke chapter 10 when a lawyer tried to ask him and trick him into a question was, what was the greatest commandment? He told that lawyer to love God with everything you have and to love your neighbor as yourself. He then said, who is my neighbor? So Jesus gives a parable of a man that was beaten an inch from his life. A priest walks by, didn't help him. Then a Levite or a political leader walked by and didn't help him. And then a Samaritan walked by. A Samaritan was the enemy of the Jews. So a man's enemy walks by and he helped him. Then Jesus said this, he said, the man that helped him, out of all these, he said, the priest, the political leader, or the Samaritan, who was the neighbor? And the lawyer said, well, it was the Samaritan. And here's what Jesus said. He said, go and do likewise. And that's what I am challenging you today to do, is like Jesus, go and show mercy where mercy is required. I ask you, city leaders, will you act like a priest, a politician, or a good Samaritan? Tonight, I ask the city council, Mayor Parker, and everyone sitting in this room, can we focus on the one thing that this is really about, the victims of human trafficking. I ask we put aside our religious differences, put aside our political differences, our offenses towards one another, and come into unity to make history and fight modern day slavery. These are the moments that history is made. Like our heroes, Abraham Lincoln, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King Jr., and others that faced injustices. It took many compassionate, strong people to stand up and make history. December 10, 2024, in the year of Reformation, is a day to say yes, to be on the right side of history. Today is a day to take a stand against human trafficking and sex trafficking. Today, you hold the power in your hand to vote to set them free. I ask you, would you use your power wisely, compassionately, and responsibly, and with the fear of the Lord? Earlier tonight, Councilman Nettles said earlier that right is right and wrong is wrong, and I agree with the councilman, and I'm asking you to do the right thing. Tonight, we ask you for your vote for our legal right to build the Justice Residence to set the captives free. Thank you.
Just for clarity, did I miss a speaker over here? Were your name on the list? No, ma'am? You sure? Okay. Our next group speaker will be Ashley Ashmore. Allison. I'm sorry, Allison. I was reading the wrong list here. Allison will have 6 minutes. And then Allison, before you start, would you prefer the groups all go first and then we do individual speakers on behalf of Oakhurst, or do you care one way or the other?
Yes, let's do groups go first and then the individual
Perfect.
speakers.
You have 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for your time here this evening. I'm Allison Ashmore. I am the legal counsel that was hired by the Neighborhood Association Board to address the legality of this situation. And I want to be very clear. The site plan amendment application that was submitted on August 5th, 2024, that seeks to add a new structure on 12 acres of property. It's seeking approval to build a 45,000 square foot facility, a dormitory style house for up to 107 residents on a full-time basis. The Zoning Commission recommended denial of that. The issue is not whether providing assistance to survivors of human trafficking is a worthy cause. And this is not an attack on religious belief or practices. This is really not a question of that at all. You've heard argument that this long-term shelter is a church-related activity. Now, we disagree that this structure, as it is truly intended to be used, actually falls under the intended purpose that's permitted for this planned development for PD 586. And we submitted a letter explaining why that is, and you all have that, and I don't need to repeat that for you here tonight. In there we say, not all possible activities must be permitted. We submitted a letter, and I'll leave it on that, but the most important question before the council isn't even whether this is a church-related activity. The issue before the council is whether to approve construction of a 45,000 square foot residential type building on a 12-acre lot on which there is already existing a church and a school and limited parking area. And that structure is not compatible with the existing area and the surrounding use of the property. Now, we do believe that Texas Local Government Code Chapter 211 does apply to this. This is a site plan amendment, which is a type of zoning. A planned development is a type of zoning. The applicable site plan is essentially the zoning regulation that applies to this property. And calling it either a site plan or a zoning regulation amendment is a distinction without a difference. It's important to have neighborhood support, and this lacks neighborhood support. Section 211.006D applies to this vote because there is a written protest. There are hundreds of signatures submitted by the Neighborhood Association opposed to this application, but there's a written protest that's signed by the owners of at least 20% of the area land that's immediately adjoining the property. And that's why we believe that section applies. Now, I'm not here as a lawyer to threaten you all with legal action as a city or in your individual capacities. You received a letter that did that. There was reference made to the letter from Liberty Institute, and I know that letter threatened you all. But I urge you not to be intimidated by those arguments and not to be manipulated by emotional arguments. The letter did not reference the governmental immunity that you all are entitled to. You all were elected by the residents, the citizens of Fort Worth, to do your job the best you can for the citizens of Fort Worth. And there is no place here for threats. And I know that you will do your jobs and not be intimidated by them. Now, there are 6 criteria that must be considered for the approval process. And section 4.304 of the code sets those out. The neighbors are going to address those 6 criteria. They've also been addressed in a letter to you, and I won't repeat them for the sake of time. But those are the factors that you need to consider, and I urge you to listen to the Oakhurst Neighborhood Association, who are here to speak about that in opposition to the application. Now, the applicant says in their written communications to you that you have to approve this plan amendment or you're violating 2 laws, RLUIPA, the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, and Texas RFRA, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. I want you to know that that is 100% not true. Those 2 laws prohibit imposing a substantial burden on religious exercise except where justified by a compelling governmental interest using the least restrictive means. RLUIPA prohibits zoning and landmarking laws that treat churches on less than equal terms with non-religious assemblies. That doesn't apply here. Mercy Culture Church is not being treated any differently, any less better than any non-religious institution. RLUIPA prohibits discrimination on the basis of religion or denomination, prohibits laws that totally exclude religious assemblies from a jurisdiction. Neither of those apply. This zoning ordinance is not being implemented on the basis of religion. RLUIPA does not provide a blanket exception from local zoning laws, and the church is not immune from its religious conduct does not immunize it from governmental regulation. In fact, Mercy Culture cannot just build anything it wants because it is a religious organization. If it sought an 8-story office building, it would still have to follow zoning laws. Denying the application does not impose a substantial burden on the church. There's no evidence of any burden.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Our next group speaker will be Blaine Brewer. Blaine Brewer on behalf of a group. And the next group would be Sonali Barr.
Hello, Council. Hello, Mayor Parker. I appreciate you having me here. My name is Blaine Brewer. I'm here today to represent and with the Bluebird Avenue street, which begins just at the front door of the church, across a narrow 2-lane road, and then runs through the heart of our neighborhood. My home is located just a couple hundred feet from the front door of the church and a few hundred feet from the structure. Now, before I proceed, I want to acknowledge that there are wonderful people on both sides of this argument. I know that the Schatz have done a lot of work to build and to get this justice reform going. I know that a lot of the families that belong to the church and a lot of the families that belong to our neighborhood, I believe that they have these victims' best interests at heart. And I don't want to shy away. I think it's very important that we support that community. However, I think it's also important to address the concerns of the people who live in the neighborhood. As you've heard before, the Oakhurst Neighborhood Association, when we had a vote, unanimously opposed the church. Over the past several years, there's been a growing sense of unease among many of us as we've heard hateful rhetoric coming from the church. The shirts that they're wearing tonight, we care more about trafficking than we do about traffic. That's kind of the tone that we've received from the church the last couple of years. I know that they're just trying to, bolster their argument, but I personally have wonderful neighbors. They've called us witches, warlocks, demons, and whatever else. I haven't met a witch or a warlock or a demon. One of my neighbors is kind of unfriendly, but she's just grumpy. The people across the street from me are actually Mercy Culture members. They're very warm people. They wave every single time they see me. Their kids have played with my kids in the front yard. They're absolutely wonderful people. And if the rest of the church is representative of the people that live across the street, then I know that the church has wonderful membership. We are not enemies. This has been a very divisive argument, a very divisive topic, but we are not enemies. We can exist and we can coexist peacefully. The reason that we oppose the proposed building is not because we are devils and demons, and we are simply families that care about the safety of our families, of our children, of our neighbors. We feared that this project and the church's apparent lack of consideration for potential consequences will put all of that at risk. Over the last couple of years, as zoning commissioner for our neighborhood, I've had conversations with many neighbors about their concerns. The church has alluded to issues about traffic, issues about property values, and I can confirm that those are some of the issues that our neighbors have. And I think that it's significant. Some of my neighbors, they're living off Social Security. The only value they have, the only thing of value that they have is their home, and they're worried about the equity in their homes falling. The church argued that the prices have gone up ever since the church came in. Well, the prices have gone up everywhere, so not just by the church. And we're not sure how it's going to affect property values, but my argument is that it's going to negatively impact them. Others are worried about extra traffic, parking spots. I think those are legitimate concerns, but it's not what I'm arguing about. By far, for me, the most consistent concern I heard from my neighbors, and my primary concern is safety. Safety is my top priority, and it's the reason I feel so strongly about posing this. The councilman from District 4 made a comment earlier about not in my backyard. He thinks it's refreshing not to hear that. I'm not saying not in my backyard. I'm saying not in any backyard. I would come in here and I would argue just like this if it was any one of your districts, because I don't think that this center should be adjacent to a neighborhood, adjacent to families. This is a very real concern that could have a lasting impact on our neighborhood, on our city. By far, the most consistent concern I've heard, like I said, has been about safety. There are state programs and agencies and laws in the state of Texas that protect the locations of these centers to keep them secret. There's a reason for that. These centers get infiltrated by the traffickers looking for their victims, looking for their property, and it's something that we need to worry about. The church has made an argument that they put up security lighting, that they put up a fence. Those are all great things, but that keeps the traffickers out of that church area and in our neighborhood, in our front yards. And this is something that we need to be concerned about. While the church has added the security fencing and the lights, there is a lack of consideration about the surrounding community. I think that's deeply concerning. As a father, my number one priority is to protect my children and protect the children in the neighborhoods that are in our neighborhood and the families that live around me, but obviously primarily my children. I worry every day about whether kids will be safe to play in our front yard as it is. We've got people that drive by quickly. It's been an issue. There's been no abductions in our neighborhood, thankfully. But I feel nervous about letting my kids play in the front yard, about riding their bike down the street. But a center like this, all the families that live in our neighborhood are going to be living with constant fear that something is going to happen to their children. They won't even allow our kids to be kids in our neighborhood. Our community will be left feeling vulnerable in the very place that they should feel like sanctuary. People will no longer feel safe in their own homes, knowing that the risks have been pushed from the center with security lighting and fencing into our neighborhood. There is one concession that the church can make in order for the neighborhood to support them, and that is location. They argue that they need that location to support the women, but I disagree. They can do this somewhere else.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer. Our next group will be Sonali Barr, followed by Libby Willis, which is also a group.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sonali Barr, and I was a lot less pregnant when I got here today. I'm also first-generation Latina, if that is relevant. I am here speaking on behalf of residents of West Lotus Avenue, the closest street to the proposed facility. Fort Worth holds a special place in my heart, and I am deeply committed to this city. It's a city that welcomes with warmth and authenticity, and no neighborhood embodies that spirit better than Oakhurst. As you can see, I'm expecting a baby girl, and I can't not think of a better place to raise her than Oakhurst. A modest community of thoughtful neighbors with an enduring 100-year history. My family hopes to make this neighborhood our home for decades to come, but today I stand before you with a deep sense of concern and a plea for your help. Standing here tonight is not something I take lightly. Earlier this year, I experienced the heartbreaking loss of my only sibling due to the devastating cycle of substance abuse and its far-reaching impacts. A tragedy that underscores the importance of creating safe and healing spaces for those in need. If the proposed facility were being built in an appropriate location with discretion and without a public marketing campaign that jeopardizes the safety of survivors and neighbors alike, it would have my full support. None of us are refuting the importance of this cause. I've met several of you through my work in commercial construction and development. Through this work, I know firsthand how critical it is to earn the trust and support of the community for a project of this scale and significance. Despite what you've heard tonight, the applicant has chosen not to engage meaningfully with our community. I have been very surprised by the statements that they've made because it has not been my experience interacting with them. They refuse to acknowledge the glaring location and scale issues that have a very real public safety impact on area residents. The outcome of tonight's decision extends far beyond our neighborhood. It has implications for all single-family zoning in Fort Worth moving forward. It could set a concerning precedent, creating uncertainty about the safety and stability of neighborhoods where families choose to live and grow. If the applicant is permitted to build anything on their property without regard for its impact on the surrounding area, it undermines the very purpose of zoning regulations. Oakhurst residents deserve the right to protect our community and our children. We love our neighborhood and cherish the safety and peace we feel as we walk along its historic blocks. I imagine the applicant's congregation values these same qualities in the neighborhoods they return to after church services, the large majority of which are not in Oakhurst or the surrounding areas. This is a community that looks out for each other's safety and well-being, and that is exactly what we are here to do tonight. We deserve to have our voices heard without being bullied into submission. I want to share a few points from my neighbors on West Lotus. Public safety. The applicants cite the high security fence, 24/7 surveillance, and flood lighting as key safety features. But these requirements implicitly acknowledge the potential for a significant threat. Predators seeking to recapture victims is a known issue for safe houses, especially when facility details are widely publicized, as in this case. Lack of buffer. Many of our homes are less than a football field's distance from the proposed site on the outside of the high security fence. How should I feel walking alone in my neighborhood with my baby if this becomes reality? Property values. As Blaine alluded to, many of our older neighbors have invested their life savings into their homes and are depending on the stable property values for retirement. Fear, uncertainty, and safety significantly influence housing market sentiment. Facility scale. The applicant cites no evidence to justify a 100-bed facility, a size that goes against expert recommendations, further jeopardizing residents and neighbors. Challenges if survivors choose to leave. What happens if they decide to leave the applicant's care? This is a large facility, and if you have any experience with substance abuse, you know how powerful the pull can be, despite the most well-meaning support and regardless of the possible trauma and suffering downstream. Proximity to I-35. As a major human trafficking corridor, I-35 poses a significant risk to survivors who choose to leave the facility. There's limited access to roads. The property location forces all traffic to flow solely through Oakhurst Scenic with no alternative routes for ingress or egress. And density. Church services and events already cause severe traffic congestion on Oakhurst Scenic, blocking the route and forcing detours. This becomes critical in emergencies, as emergency vehicles may struggle to access homes. The applicant refuses to consider alternate locations, they refuse to work with experts, and they refuse to listen to legitimate concerns. There are so many practical reasons that this facility does not make sense in this location. How will this unwillingness manifest in the day-to-day operations of running a facility like this one? The applicant has not made a good faith effort to listen to our community and respond earnestly, again, despite what you've heard today, and again, it has been shocking to hear their interpretation of what has occurred. Neighbors who previously felt secure are extremely worried for the safety of their children playing outside due to the hateful rhetoric the shots have used against our neighborhood. They use their national platform to amplify a dehumanizing message against us. And this disproportionate response to our sincere safety concerns has been a significant stress on our community. If you are driven by faith, I ask you to consider, what if God has more to say than what mercy culture leaders are willing to listen to? Councilmen and women, I hope that you can hear how deeply we care. While the applicant attempts to paint us as villains, the reality is that we are mothers and fathers, friends and advocates. We come from all different walks of life, but we are rooted together through a community that we love. Please help us to protect our children, our homes, and our safety. Thank you for your time and consideration. Thank you.
Our next group is Libby Willis. And then the next group would be Maggie Maxton.
Good evening, Mayor Parker and council members. As property owners in Oakhurst since 1987, this is for my husband and me, and as a former president of the Oakhurst Neighborhood Association, we oppose SB 24013. We remain in favor of providing professional care for formerly sex-trafficked women. We don't know anyone, particularly our neighbors in Oakhurst, who are not in favor of that. However, for a variety of reasons, the Mercy Culture Church site immediately adjacent to the Oakhurst neighborhood is not the right location for the project they propose. It is not the right location for the victims to be helped by the project, and it is not the right location for residents of the Oakhurst neighborhood. The long and short of it is that it is a worthy project, but it is proposed for the wrong location. The organization called Refuge for Women is the nation's largest recovery program for victims of human trafficking and sexual exploitation, and its headquarters are right here in North Texas. Their leaders say this about safety, quote, "Safety is our #1 priority. Safety means keeping the location of the program homes confidential," unquote. Interstate 35 is adjacent to the proposed church project site, and according to the Texas Department of Transportation counts of 2020, and you know that these numbers are greater today, at least 115,000 people travel on I-35 right by the church location in our neighborhood every day. That means the site that is proposed for this project is hardly a confidential location. That makes me worry for the women because we know their traffickers want them back and will seek to get them back, especially if they know where they are. The church has said that the women will not leave the facility for 1 to 3 years. There is a difference, however, between 24-hour security cited by the church and detention. The proposed facility is not a place of mandatory supervision. Only the court system can impose literal restraint of individuals. The church cannot keep the women there against their will. If they want to leave, they can. You can be sure that their former traffickers would be only too glad to entice the women and pick them up in the Oakhurst neighborhood. These are public safety concerns. We also have many concerns about overflow church parking in our neighborhood, which we already have, even without this project, as well as increased traffic on Oakhurst Scenic Drive, the western border of our neighborhood. These concerns are important to our 100-year-old neighborhood, listed as the Oakhurst Historic District in 2010 on the National Register of Historic Places. This is a federal designation for places worthy of preservation in the nation. Any project with federal money and that might have an adverse impact on the Oakhurst Historic District is subject to the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, Section 106, which provides that the adverse impact must be mitigated. The neighborhood had a seat at the table when TxDOT widened Interstate 35 10 years ago right next to Oakhurst, and that's because of the National Historic Preservation Act, Section 106. TxDOT made adjustments in that project because Oakhurst is on the National Register. To my knowledge, the proposed project has no federal funds, so now the Zoning Commission and the City Council could act as federal officials would in this case if it did have federal funds in it. The job is to consider the impact of the project on the neighborhood, one of the foundational neighborhoods in the city and one of only 5 in the city listed on the National Register. The National Historic Preservation Act was established to designate and protect historic neighborhoods and other historic places in our nation. Oakhurst Scenic Drive was built in 1937, and it is the westernmost boundary of the historic district, the Oakhurst Historic District. It was built by the Works Progress Administration. Federal funds were given as a park drive, which was what Oakhurst Scenic Drive was designed to be, and it was built by the county and the City of Fort Worth Park Department and maintained as a park road by the city. It is now an official City of Fort Worth scenic corridor in the Fort Worth Zoning Ordinance, Chapter 6, Section 6.402, entitled Scenic Preservation Areas and Corridors under Arterial Scenic Corridors. Oakhurst Scenic Drive deserves protection as well as from adverse impacts of the project, like traffic and the parking that we continue to see up into the neighborhood. If you think about it, both the victims to be helped in this project and the neighborhood need protection. The women so they can heal and be restored to new, healthy lives. The neighborhood so it can continue to be stable and continue to thrive for the next 100 years. These are both worthy goals. The church's project is worthy. It simply needs a location different than it has been proposed to be on. And also, we need the neighborhood to be able to continue its life as we have known it for these 100 years. Please deny SB 24013. Thank you very much.
Our next group is Maggie Maxton, followed by Allison Ashmore's group. No, Allison already spoke. I'm sorry. Go with Maggie here.
Hi, y'all. My name is Maggie Maxton, and I'm here to speak on behalf of myself and my neighbors on Primrose, Marigold, and Smilax in opposition to the Mercy Culture Church's site plan amendment to build a large housing unit for survivors of sex trafficking. As someone who has lived in Oakhurst my entire life, we moved there in elementary school, and now my husband and I own a house there. We love this neighborhood. We have a deep appreciation for the sense of community and safety that we have worked so hard to build and maintain over the years. Let me be clear, we fully support helping survivors of sex trafficking. However, this project, and specifically its location, raises significant concerns. The proposed site is on the edge of Oakhurst, as you've heard, our historic and family-friendly neighborhood that is surrounded by schools, including one on the premises. This proximity raises significant safety concerns. Mercy Culture has heavily advertised the location, which is contrary to how this important work is usually done. Reputable organizations understand that discretion is essential to protect these vulnerable populations from further exploitation. Publicizing the location may increase the likelihood of loitering by individuals involved in their exploitation. While the church has plans to provide security on its own property to mitigate this concern, they cannot ensure the safety of the surrounding streets. This undermines the sense of safety in our neighborhood. A major part of our incredibly friendly neighborhood is that we feel safe enough to hang out outdoors with each other. We go walking, we garden, we chat on the streets, we go play at the park. If the shelter is built and unsafe people start loitering around our neighborhood, it will reduce our feelings of safety and likely harm this community that we have built. Infrastructure concerns. The area's infrastructure is ill-equipped to handle the additional demands this development would create. Mercy Culture already struggles with parking issues. Their congregation frequently exceeds their allotted parking spaces, resulting in illegal parking along Oakhurst Scenic and onto our streets. This creates hazardous conditions, particularly on Sunday mornings, by impeding visibility. It also creates challenges for emergency vehicle access to the church or neighborhood. While the church has claimed to add 18 or 20 spots for this housing program, this number is clearly inadequate given the existing lack of adequate parking. Further expansion will only exacerbate these problems, making our roads even less safe and less accessible. Oakhurst Scenic is not intended to be a major thoroughfare for the city. Rather, it is a small, park-adjacent and residential-adjacent street. Increasing traffic and potentially illegal parking is not in the best interests of our community. Additionally, the proposal could negatively impact adjacent property values. The potential for unsafe individuals loitering in the area may undermine the stability and desirability of our family-friendly neighborhood. The potential for increased traffic and safety concerns further compound this risk. In addition to infrastructure concerns, Mercy Culture has a history of being an uncooperative and unfriendly neighbor. Beyond parking concerns, they have repeatedly disrespected our community by labeling us with derogatory terms such as witches, demons, and agents of Satan. Such inflammatory rhetoric is divisive and undermines the trust necessary for productive community relations. Their actions show a pattern of disregard for the well-being of our neighborhood, which raises serious doubts about their ability to manage a program of this magnitude responsibly. Finally, as a registered nurse, I am deeply concerned about the absence of ethical safeguards and transparency. Mercy Culture has not secured public support from existing nonprofits in the area that have decades of experience in this field. They have not shared plans for oversight and collaboration from reputable organizations. They have not shared any plan to ensure qualified individuals will be providing trauma-informed care. The medically proven purpose of which is to provide holistic care to mitigate harm to the participants and is of the utmost importance. From the information available, the program lacks evidence-based practices, which will further prevent exploitation of these women in this emotionally vulnerable state. In conclusion, while the mission to support survivors is commendable, the building of this shelter on the edge of a neighborhood near multiple schools is fundamentally flawed. We urge the council to uphold the Zoning Commission's decision and reject this proposal. Instead, Mercy Culture could collaborate with existing reputable organizations in the city which have a proven track record of doing this important work. Together, they could develop a program that benefits and houses these vulnerable individuals utilizing trauma-informed care and following best practices, and not placed in close proximity to any neighborhood without compromising the safety and well-being of our community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Request of the Oakhurst neighborhood, Catherine Bauer will be last. I'm going to move to, her group will be last. I'm going to move to individual speakers. The first. Hold on, Rick, just a second. I believe you, I'm just tired. Let me make sure. You do, Rick, you're next, and then we'll move. The next individual speaker will be Kelly McCormick. Rick Herring on behalf of a group, thank you.
Thank you. I didn't mean to speak out of turn.
I appreciate it. Keep me on track.
But I think I have 10 or 11 people, and they're welcome to come down. And if Eric Jones is here, come on down with us, Eric. But good evening, Mayor Parker, city council members, city staff, and a special shout out to my own council member, Jeanette Martinez. There she is. Rick Herring from Riverside. Thanks for having me. By the way, I want to make it clear so everybody knows, Riverside and Oakhurst residents vigorously opposed all the apartments that overtook the most beautiful bluff above the Trinity River in Fort Worth. So to say we did not is completely false. And I am here to respectfully request that you deny this site plan amendment request. I won't be repeating what others have said, and so maybe that'll be a relief to you to hear some new information. But I do have two main points I'd like to cover. At its core, this is a land use issue. And I know that you all know that and realize that. Although there are other very legitimate and alarming concerns with this application, I'm speaking only to the land use issue and locating a 107-unit multifamily building, dormitory, shelter, discipleship center, or whatever you want to call it, immediately across the street from a single-family neighborhood with no intervening buffer zone of transitional zoning, as is usually the case, which you also know, of course. The site under consideration is located immediately adjacent to the beautiful Oakhurst neighborhood that's flourished for the past 100 years. In zoning issues, we always hear buffers, 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 transitional zoning from city staff. And it was the same when I served on the zoning commission for a number of years, several years ago. And there is almost always a transitional zoning between single-family neighborhoods such as Oakhurst and more intensive uses such as what is being proposed here. Something such as duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, whatever it may be. And in fact, as you also know, the city of Fort Worth created the urban residential UR zoning district just for this purpose, i.e. to provide a transition from highly dense housing to single-family housing. It's just the way it is. This cardinal rule of zoning is drummed into our heads and repeated over and over, excuse me, by the City of Fort Worth staff and the city attorney's office. That is my first point. In this case, there is no transitional buffer zoning between a dense housing facility for 107 persons and a single-family neighborhood a stone's throw away. My second point, the case you heard and denied last year, ZC 23015 at 2201 Annabelle Lane in Rolling Hills. You denied this case because it was placing a dense housing facility in a single-family neighborhood. The intended use was for a wonderful ministry by Dash Network to assist refugee families. Many of you on the dais tonight made statements to the applicant in that case that you fully supported their mission and that it was a wonderful project. But you said this is not the right place. Repeat, you said this is not the right place. The Dash Network did go on to find the right place with help from some of you, I know. And the Justice residents can do the same. The parallels of the Dash Network case to the current case are striking in the extreme. One major difference is that the Dash Network project offered detached units that would house a far lesser number of residents, while the case under current consideration intends to house over 100. Yet, council chose to deny that request. As was also expressed in the Dash Network case, what may be the unforeseen and unintended consequences if the proposed ministry at Justice Residences is not successful and does not continue. In that case, Oakhurst is then forever saddled with an empty multifamily facility in their neighborhood and all of the problems that go along with that. I simply ask that you consider two items. Consider the long and well-established zoning concept of transitional zoning districts to provide buffers between incompatible uses, single-family and more intensive uses. And secondly, consider what you just did last year when you denied another case that has an almost identical fact pattern. And I do realize that we're talking about a site plan amendment and not a straight-up zoning change, and there are some nuances there, obviously. But the end result will be the same if you approve this application. I also ask that this council be bold. You are being bullied, threatened, and intimidated, and we understand the intense pressure that you are under to make the right decision. But I ask that you be bold, like you were bold when Councilmember Martinez led a city-initiated zoning change to protect Echo Heights from further industrial encroachment. I ask that you be bold like you were when Councilmember Lauersdorf led a city-initiated zoning change to protect children from a motel being built next to their school, where strangers would be constantly coming and going just as they will in the Justice Residences, also next to a school. This council has done some pretty bold things to protect neighborhoods. I ask you to be bold. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kelly McCormick, followed by Mike Richardson, followed by Shannon Scanlon. If we could just make sure they're in the room if they didn't have a seat already. Thank you. Ms. McCormick.
Thank you. And also, my husband, Byron Kopsa, defers his time. He had to put our toddler to sleep, so only one of us could stay. So I believe that the ONA's zoning argument against the site plan amendment is clear and powerful. Here I want to emphasize a joint concern about parking and how it relates to the safety of women and girls at the Justice residences if this facility is built. In July 2022, the Fort Worth Weekly interviewed 2 survivors of sex trafficking and 1 local professional who worked with them. These women voiced serious concerns about exploitation and isolation at Mercy Culture. Pam, the local professional, stated that the victims she worked with began displaying unsettling changes just months after attending Mercy Culture. And this is a direct quote from Pam. There was a shift where they withdrew from their former support group. We encouraged survivors to have outside support. The church leaders isolated them. They were cutting everyone off who wasn't part of Mercy Culture. That's a red flag. The Mercy Culture Site Plan Amendment shows that these concerns about safety and isolation from 2022 remain in 2024. 18 parking spaces is in no way sufficient for the support and staff needed to adequately care for 100 victims of sex trafficking. We're talking about healthcare, mental health professionals, trauma-based care, job training, the list goes on and on. Mercy Culture claims that the facility will not exacerbate parking and traffic concerns, but they cannot have it both ways. They cannot provide adequate care for 100 victims, access to crucial resources and outside support without far more than 18 parking spaces. So again, this location is not suitable for the church's goals. I wish them well in finding one where women and girls can in fact be safely housed and properly supported. Thank you for your time.
Mike Richardson will be followed by Shannon Scanlon.
Hello, I am Mike Richardson. I moved to Honeysuckle in Oakhurst over 20 years ago. 2 days ago, my wife and I celebrated our 4th wedding anniversary. After we got married, we knew we needed a bigger home and we knew we wanted to stay in Oakhurst. We finally found our, quote, perfect home this past summer, over 3 years later, and literally just up the hill and with 100 yards from Mercy Culture Church. We can easily see the church from our front porch. I'm a physical therapist and have been for 25 years. I care about and I help people. That's where my heart is. I share that I'm a PT because human trafficking prevention training is required for my license renewal as well as all healthcare providers in Texas. Millions upon millions of people, with over 70% being women and girls, are victimized every year by greedy, amoral human traffickers. This zoning issue has caused me to do a lot of self-reflection. Was this an instance of, yes, this is a very important issue that sorely needs to be addressed, but just not back in my backyard mentality? Basically, this is Mercy Culture Church trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. Specifically, a 3-story, nearly 45,000 square foot, 107-bed square peg. A facility of this type is simply not a good fit for their proposed location. You've heard the many reasons already why this location is not a good idea. But ultimately, I decided that I needed to oppose this proposed expansion because I have grave concerns that these survivors of human trafficking would be unnecessarily placed at increased risk of being exploited again, as the church is simply not following better practices regarding the standard of not disclosing housing location of these survivors. I shared earlier that I was a physical therapist. I did home health for several years, and I got to know where a lot of things were in Fort Worth during that time. However, one type of facility that I never knew the location of were safe houses, as this anonymity was best practices to keep these survivors safe. Sadly, Mercy Culture Church is showing no such discretion with the location of their human trafficking residence, which simply puts these very vulnerable people and way too many other people unnecessarily in danger and at risk for being further exploited. In closing, just like my new neighbors across the street who are also within 100 yards of this church, our neighborhood association, and the many neighbors that I've spoken to over the past month, and the Fort Worth Zoning Commission, I oppose these proposed changes and humbly ask that you guys all do the same. I appreciate you listening.
Ganlon. If I'm butchering, I'm sorry. Is that you? No. You did SU. Okay. Next up would be Jan Buck, and then Sarah Murphy.
Good evening, Council. My name is Shannon Scanlon, and I am the past president of the Oakhurst Neighborhood Association. Council, I'm here tonight to ask you to vote against the sex trafficking shelter proposed by Mercy Culture. It is pretty clear that the shelter is not compatible and consistent with the current surroundings, land use of houses, schools, and parks. Further, the atrocious traffic and parking issues brought to this peaceful neighborhood by the church is well documented. The few alleged parking spaces added to this plan will do nothing to help the overflow of parking they often realize. There is not enough time for me to detail the ill planning and effects of this shelter, including drops in property values, light pollution, poor ingress and egress both into the property and the building. What I would like to bring to your attention is the statistics concerning trafficking shelters of this scope and scale, which are bad for the victims they claim to care for. The Samaritan Women Institute for Shelter Care composed a study in 2022, which I've offered there, with a focus on large capacity shelters. What they found in summary is that the average capacity shelter bed is 9 beds, and 30 beds, which is rare, is considered a large scale shelter. Annual budgets are in the millions to maintain large shelters, which there is no indication that the church can achieve those financial requirements, and that the victims don't do well in large community. It's chaos multiplied. You must have people who are gifted at managing that many people. And the more girls you have, the more drama you have, the more fights, the more self-harm, the more bad behaviors, etc. Council, the applicant often points to the Dream Center in Los Angeles as a model for success, but that facility was built as a private hospital nearly 100 years ago, and the city essentially grew around it. It's not a new building that was proposed in the middle of a neighborhood, but rather a recycled building in a mixed-use area of low-income apartments and houses. Further, there are homeless camps and rubbish in the streets and lines of people around that building waiting for assistance. Council, these victims come with an array of physical and emotional problems. Staff burnout within shelters of any size is real, and there appears to be zero plan to protect their own volunteers and staff for the trauma they will suffer in a shelter of this scale. Further, the church has told us that they will not give us 1 inch. Last, I would like you to consider this. If this facility is safe and in a good fit beside a historic neighborhood, parks, and a school, then why do they need all those high walls and security and lighting and an alleged partnership with Fort Worth PD? Thank you.
Jan will be followed by Sarah Murphy.
Good evening. My name is Jan Buck, and I am the moderator of the Riverside Alliance. We are the organization of the 9 neighborhoods in the Riverside area that meet together and work collaboratively in our area. And the membership voted unanimously to oppose the approval of the site plan 24013. Our primary concern is just the potential interpretation of church-related activity to include a residential component of any kind, much less a facility that is essentially a mental health and substance abuse treatment center. Trying to manage 100 relatively functional people living in close quarters would be challenging enough, but a population that will have a myriad of mental health, substance abuse, and medical issues will be overwhelming for a church to take on and will likely end up drawing on, city resources. But for us, it was even if the facility was going to be a hotel or a dorm or apartment complex, we don't think that housing people is a function of the church. Now, certainly there are a lot of faith-based ministries on a much smaller scale who are having a huge impact, and I'm a believer and I'm a supporter of those ministries. But in terms of an actual church having residential component on campus, we just didn't really see that that's a fit for church-related activities. And this liberal interpretation of church-related activity is kind of opening the door for other religious groups to decide they want to start building housing, apartments, whatever. Let's go ahead and start just keeping people on campus. And so we just don't think it's the appropriate use for that zoning, and we are asking City Council to deny the site plan amendment. Thank you.
Sarah Murphy. Is Sarah here? Let's just make sure Sarah's not in overflow, please. Denise Bennett. Is Denise here? Denise Bennett. Christy Miller. Should they leave? Okay. Carla Palmares.
Hey folks, I've been here all day with y'all too. Back again. As a tax-paying, home-owning, community-loving resident of the Oakhurst neighborhood and District 11, I am not a member of Mercy Culture. I'm also not currently a member of our neighborhood association, but I do come before council today to voice my concern and disapproval of the proposed use of land and planning amendment by Mercy Culture Church for the purpose of building and establishing a discipleship center adjacent to I-35 off Oakhurst Scenic Roadway. I know y'all have heard all of the reasons why it's not a great idea. I do want to say that I've reviewed the attached plans that were on today's agenda. Can assure you, as a person who lives in the neighborhood and daily uses the roadways, that this proposed plan would be negatively impactful to our neighborhood. This zoning request must be denied as per the recommendation of the Zoning Commission. I implore you, Councilmember Jeanette Martinez, to please put a motion on the floor to have this denied so we can all go home, and make sure that we put this to rest in this final attempt, because we're tired. We're tired of having this ongoing dispute between the church, between the neighborhood. It's really frustrating, and it is very stressful. Just want to say, constructing a 3-story building, probably going to be painted white with concrete, fencing, and barriers. They're just going to continue to add very stressing infrastructure to an area that actually needs some sidewalks and to have some potholes filled. My husband and I walk our dog. I know I see neighbors frequently using this area, and yes, it is very congested by the church traffic. And it's only going to get worse if we do approve this amendment. So I do please ask Jeanette that you put a motion on the floor. Let's deny this. Thank you. Good night.
Jennifer Gataco, followed by Adam Gonzalez.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Jennifer Gotwalko, and I live in the Oakhurst neighborhood. I want to first address the comments that were made regarding the crime. Since 2020, I've had 2 cars stolen from my driveway, and I regularly provide videotape of criminal activity in our neighborhood to the Fort Worth Police Department. So the church has not really done anything to stop crime in our neighborhood. I strongly oppose SB 24013. As an educator with 27 years of experience, I fully recognize the need for resources to support survivors of sex trafficking. However, my training and understanding of the needs of vulnerable populations make it clear that the proposed location is unsuitable for this facility. Unfortunately, Mercy Culture's highly publicized approach and the facility's proposed central location along I-35, a corridor infamous for trafficking activity, stand in direct opposition to established best practice. At this point, Mercy Culture appears more focused on winning a zoning dispute than on genuinely prioritizing the victim's well-being. Organizations with expertise in this field understand the importance of operating quietly and discreetly to ensure confidentiality and security. Mercy Culture's Promotional campaigns and insistence on this high-profile location demonstrate a concerning disregard for these principles. If their goal was to truly help victims, they would reconsider their approach and prioritize a safer, more private site. This zoning change does do the things that the other community members have raised. It is a dangerous precedent for changing the zoning. It is a strain on the infrastructure, and it does provide increased traffic. It may impact our property values in a negative manner. But mostly, based on Mercy Culture's action, I question their true motives. Are they genuinely prioritizing victim safety, or are they more concerned with public recognition? Their aggressive promotion of this project and their refusal to consider more discreet, secure alternatives suggest the latter, because the Bible warns against such self-serving behavior. As Matthew chapter 6, verses 1-3 teaches, be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do. I urge the council to deny this request and encourage Mercy Culture to explore alternative locations, ones that align with best practice, protect the victims, and respect the integrity of the community. Thank you.
Ellis will be followed by Joseph Neville.
Good evening. My name is Adam Gonzalez. I'm a resident of Oakhurst, and I'm speaking against SP 24013. I urge you to uphold the Zoning Commission's decision to deny the proposed facility. Zoning regulations exist to benefit the entire city, and the Commission has fulfilled its role, and overturning its decision should require a very compelling reason. Interpreting church-related activities broadly leads to absurd outcomes. Imagine, if you will, a pastor claiming divine inspiration to open a scrapyard or a game room dedicated to teaching the holiness of combinatrix. I know you guys really miss game rooms and eight-liners, so if it was in a church, I'm sure you guys would love it. Church-related activities, therefore, must be interpreted narrowly. So what would an average person, if asked, what is a church-related activity, respond? I'll posit a few responses for you. Things like attending church services, praying, Bible study, singing hymns, tithing or donating money, volunteering to church events or community service, Sunday school for children, et cetera, et cetera. I think that these are things that if you grabbed an average Fort Worthian off the streets, they would respond. And I think that something like a trafficking facility is counter to all of these very common sense examples. So, building a center for sex trafficking victims is noble but demanding, requiring extensive resources for residents' care, security, and daily operations. Proceeding without community support is irresponsible. A 100-room facility raises safety concerns for residents and neighbors, making open communication essential. Unfortunately, the church's fear-driven tactics have damaged community trust, weakening the ability to serve victims effectively. My fear is that a lack of evidence-based practices is that all sex trafficking victims deserve unconditional care, regardless of sexual orientation, race, religion, or creed. Rehabilitation should focus on individual recovery. Requiring submission to a specific religious belief as a condition for help is inherently coercive, even if unintended. Such a structure risks being predatory and, in my opinion, is unacceptable. While the church has proposed involving police in security efforts, our force is already understaffed. Additionally, such a facility would strain infrastructure, such as water, sewage, and electricity, creating real costs for taxpayers. The church seeks city approval while shifting substantial burdens onto public services and residents, all while claiming that it would be better if the city just stayed out of the way. To the best of my knowledge, an offer to compromise is a new development in a multi-month affair. In the interim, the church has utilized bombastic fear-mongering, otherization, and staunch my way or the highway mentality. A late attempt to compromise is not a characterization of previous months. Thank you.
Joseph Neville is our next speaker, and I think I've been told no one else is an overflow, so that would be closing with Catherine Bauer, which is a group.
Thank you. Madam Mayor.
Just a second, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yes, sir. Were you a speaker? What was your name? Jared Miller. Okay. I'm sure you're on here somewhere. I do have you, Jared. We'll have you go after this next. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Joseph Neville. I'm a current resident in District 7 and a former resident of Oakhurst. I'm a former educator, youth pastor, and former leader within Mercy Culture's creative initiative called Axel. I have witnessed firsthand the Shot's pattern of using fear, emotional manipulation, and misinformation to intimidate its members, its staff, volunteers, and most recently, its Oakhurst neighbors. One example of that pattern is this. After Heather Shot publicly criticized and bullied a barista for enforcing a temporary mask policy, one of her own worship leaders privately confronted her. This leader said, "I don't feel this is right or that it represents Jesus." What was Heather Shot's response? She accused the worship leader of being demonically influenced by a spirit of offense, then offered to exorcise that spirit via her own pastoral care. This was the final of many manipulations I witnessed that led me to part ways with the church. Over the past several weeks, Landon Shott has mobilized tens of thousands of online followers in a national campaign to label their Oakhurst neighbors as demonically influenced anti-Christian activists. This was not because Oakhurst opposed the Justice Center itself, but simply its proposed location. Yesterday, I was personally mocked by Landon Shott, who accused me of not caring about victims of sex trafficking. Sadly, this is consistent with their approach, using fear and emotional manipulation as organizational tools. Now let's talk about those victims. Just this morning, I spoke with someone counseling 2 trafficked women formerly under the care of Heather Shott. These women say they felt, quote, pimped and emotionally manipulated to help raise funds for the Justice Center. I'm asking you to consider why there is such staunch opposition to this project. This is not about opposing the fight against human trafficking. We all want to help those affected by this tragedy, especially in our own communities and city. The opposition is to its methods, its messaging, and the location of the project. We are not demonically possessed, anti-Christian activists, as the Shotts would have you and their followers believe. We are teachers, pastors, parents, doctors, counselors, many of whom are also Christians and Christ followers. Please do not give into the fear of the mob. Please do not give into bullying. We ask that you respect the recommendation made by the Zoning Commission. Thank you for your time and for your service to our community. Thank you.
Good evening, esteemed mayor and distinguished members of the Fort Worth City Council. My name is Jarrett Miller and my wife, Evelyn, and I live at 1944 Bluebird Avenue in the Oakhurst neighborhood. Our street discharges onto Oakhurst Scenic Drive, and our home is about 1/2 block away from the Mercy Culture campus. We are before you tonight as concerned residents of Oakhurst to speak against the approval of the construction of this facility. Tonight you will hear or have heard several speakers also argue in opposition to this facility for reasons ranging from the legal perspective, increased traffic, inadequate parking, improper zoning, likely loss in property values, and numerous other reasons. Of course, these are excellent reasons, but tonight I would like to focus on the single issue that should be at the very top of the list for any project that is under consideration by this esteemed body: safety and security. The shelter's location on I-35W poses an immediate safety risk. Highways are busy, transient areas, and traffickers know how to use such routes to locate and re-exploit survivors. A shelter placed in such a visible, accessible area could become a target for traffickers trying to find their victims. It's easy for traffickers to drive past, identify the shelter, and potentially attempt to re-enter the lives of the survivors who are trying to escape. This increases the risk that traffickers could track down these individuals and in a location that should be a place of refuge. The fact that this facility's location has been highly publicized only adds to the danger. With the facility being so well known, there's a higher likelihood of harmful individuals targeting the area, whether traffickers, those with ill intentions, or even people looking to disrupt the facility. In a report entitled Finding a Path to Recovery, Residential Facilities for Minor Victims of Domestic Sex Trafficking, published on the U.S. government's HHS website, under the heading Security of Facility, the very first example cited for securing the facility is undisclosed location. Survivors are already vulnerable, and drawing this kind of attention puts them at an even greater risk. The shelter's location on the same grounds as a grade school is extremely concerning. Human traffickers are likely to target this facility, putting children attending the school, along with their families, at risk simply by being in the vicinity of the facility. With the grade school so close, this creates a higher likelihood of traffickers using the school grounds to locate survivors, therefore putting both children and survivors in danger. We strongly agree that facilities such as this are badly needed in our society, but this is not an appropriate location. We are relying on you as leaders of our great city to make a common sense choice that does not put citizens at unnecessary risk. For the residents of Oakhurst, this is not a hypothetical situation, as it is for most of you. I'll end with this. Put yourself in our position. If this was your neighborhood and your home, how would you vote?
Thank you.
I think the answer is obvious. Thank you.
Catherine Bauer on behalf of a group.
Mayor Parker, council members, good evening. My name is Catherine Bauer, and as president of the Oakhurst Neighborhood Association, I would like to thank you for the time to express Oakhurst comments, concerns, and ongoing questions with regard to SB 24013. I'm joined tonight by dozens of neighbors all wearing green and 384 signatures, which we have attained in opposition to this proposal. We're asking you to accept the recommendation of your zoning commission and deny this proposal because if approved, SB 24013 would allow for the construction of a facility with an unclear and ever-changing intended use, but a very foreseeable and multifaceted impact to the surrounding community, including the Oakhurst neighborhood. In August of this year, I had the distinct honor to accept this proclamation on behalf of Oakhurst in recognition and celebration of our neighborhood's 100th anniversary. As evidenced by each of your names affixed here too, you stood unanimously with Oakhurst and its neighbors on that night. I take us back to this night not only for the unanimous stand this council took on Oakhurst's behalf, but because of the time of acceptance, I ask this of each of you, to continue to stand with Oakhurst and ensure that it is protected for the next 100 years and beyond. Oakhurst asks that you do just that tonight and vote to deny this site plan amendment. Oakhurst in no way opposes the applicant's stated desire to assist victims of human trafficking. In fact, many Oakhurst neighbors dedicate their own professional careers and personal time to serving and assisting those in need. Oakhurst neighbors are doctors, nurses, mental health professionals, prosecutors, peace officers, social workers, civil servants, victim advocates, and regularly volunteer with churches and local nonprofits to help the same or similar populations the applicant also seeks to assist. But based on zoning best practices, current issues with parking and traffic congestion, and the legitimate safety concerns, Oakhurst has very sincere and objective stance to this, from which it has posed the following question: is the proposed location an appropriate location for this type of facility? This is a question that you as City Council maintain discretion over, in which you can consider in light of 6 objective factors and overall cohesion with the city's comprehensive plan, which should quote unquote facilitate the movement of people and goods and the health and safety and welfare of the citizens of the city. The proposed amendment and corresponding construction does none of these things and will exacerbate or create additional issues. What you can expect from Oakhurst tonight is what you've already heard: objectivity and sincerity. We could have asked Oakhurst's 384 neighbors who voiced their concerns this evening to take a stand and speak, but instead we've taken an organized approach because we value this council's time and because we see the evidence supporting denial as concrete and to the point. The Neighborhood Association has asked, we had these 6 neighbors stand on behalf of larger groups along with some individual speakers. And tonight we heard some troubling things, but one thing I do want to say is to express gratitude for Councilwoman Martinez for the meeting that she brokered between both applicant and Oakhurst last Thursday on the 5th. And contrary to what you might have heard tonight, that was the first meeting that Oakhurst has had with this neighborhood since the spring of 2022. That was the first time that the applicant asked Oakhurst to meet with them about this project, and we have not heard anything from them since that time. We have not been asked to sit at a table with them and talk about our concerns until Councilwoman Martinez brokered that deal, and until they lost at the zoning commission. What we did receive was this on some neighbors' doors. This is an exhibit to our written position statement. And what you'll find on here is that you can scan a code to contact and voice your support, and that's all you can voice is support. You can't ask questions, you can't pose concerns, and you can't ask for engagement with the applicant to perhaps come to a different conclusion. And yes, it's true that when posed the question of how many beds would be sufficient for Oakhurst, I didn't have an answer because that was the first time we were ever asked the question of, would you be willing to come to the table and negotiate? So instead, I posed the further question to the applicant, which was this: how many beds would you be willing to concede? And they said none. And I said, okay, what about a different location? And they said, we want to have more of these in other locations, and that they don't want to build this in a different location. So I think Oakhurst stands ready and able to, with a desire to want to work with the applicant if that's something they want to do. The 6 factors that you can consider tonight are the adequacy of the buffer between the project and Oakhurst, the adequacy of access roads, parking, nuisance control, directional lighting, impact of the proposal on property values. And as far as the adequacy of the buffer, I think Oakhurst's response to this would be, as you've heard tonight, there is no buffer. Zoning tradition and best practice calls for some kind of transitional zoning between multifamily and single-family residential, and we don't have that here. This creates very real safety and nuisance concerns and issues that's evidenced by the recent nuisance abatement lawsuit filed by the Attorney General of Texas against an Austin church for the increase in crime, drug use, and overall havoc its shelter brought to an Austin neighborhood and neighborhood school. And I would invite you to look into the State of Texas versus Sunshine. There's a reason we have zoning standards, and prevention of these types of issues is that exact reason. Oakhurst's next concern is density. You've heard about the concerns with parking, traffic, and all of that. But the main concern is safety and future use, as that would impact our property values and just our overall ability to utilize our neighborhood fully. We've spoken to Sergeant Johnson, Commander Turner, NPO Bauer, Program Coordinator Talent. It does not appear that there is any arrangement with Fort Worth PD. In that meeting that applicant brought up, we were told that there was a commercial alarm system given. But I think a common theme that you've heard tonight is this from the neighbors, that Oakhurst is not just a neighborhood, it's the definition of living in community. And it's more than community, it's really family. And so we know this council stands with Fort Worth's neighborhood, supports its communities, and loves its families. So why would this vote be any different tonight? We also know this council supports and loves the faith-based organizations, including what applicant does. So please know this: a vote in opposition is not a vote against victims. It's not a vote against churches. It's not even a vote against applicants. It is a yes to finding a place for Fort Worth.
Catherine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Deny.
Councilmember Martinez, that's the conclusion of our speakers.
Do any of my colleagues have comments they want to make before I make mine?
Sure. Council, anybody want to speak? If you just hit your green light, that helps me immensely.
Okay. Well, first, I want to thank all who made time to speak on this very contentious case tonight. I also want it to be known that I have met with both sides on several occasions, and as we've heard, as recently as last week. Regardless of what is said tonight, it is my sense that council votes are influenced by politics, and that is truly sad and disappointing. It is my belief that the site plan concerns of the community are valid, and I therefore move in suit with zoning council to deny with prejudice SP 24013.
I've got a motion on the floor. Council? Can you repeat your motion, Jeanette? Councilmember Nettles? Go ahead. Well, who wants to speak first? Just hit your button. It helps me. Chris, you going first, and then Michael. Okay, Michael, go. Perfect. Chris, you're up. Go for it. Go for it. You're good. And you can, if you want a second, do whatever you want to do after that, that's fine.
I'll second your motion.
Councilmember Crane?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I do have a couple of comments I'd like to make here. Some of you know that there's sometimes an unwritten rule that we follow the council member's lead without question. Sometimes these cases rise to a different level, community input and other things make it so, and we've done that a few times over the last 4 years, this council mostly, and I've seen it the 8 years I've been involved with council. I do want to say that that requires to do some more due diligence. I've talked with representatives from the Oakhurst neighborhood. I've talked with representatives from Mercy Culture, and this increased due diligence. Visited the site on multiple occasions just to look at in general. Again, I know that doesn't replace living there and being there, but I wanted to give some info here. Sunday, October 27th, 11:47 a.m. I know parking has been an issue. There were 54 at least empty parking spots, and staff admitted that it was a medium intensity day given who was preaching at that time. Sunday, November 3rd, 11:22 a.m. for the 11:30 a.m. service. Traffic was, these are my notes, traffic was moderate. At the end of the one service was the beginning of another service. We departed about 10 minutes before the end of service and noted 100 plus parking spaces out there. No parked cars in the neighborhood streets of Marigold or the private drive that was there. Light amount of cars on scenic Oakhurst. Sunday, November 10th at 6:20 p.m., 50 cars in total on all the lots, none on scenic Oakhurst. I'm giving you a variety of times that we visited I visited so you know. Tuesday, November 12th at 10:58 a.m., I drove scenic Oakhurst, West Lotus, Bluebird. There was little traffic. Parking lot was set up for food distribution, which occurs on Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to 3. I spoke with Austin, who runs the program, and he said you get about 500 or 600 cars through that during that time period. Also met Raudo, is that how you say her name? Former New York Police Department, who does security. I actually woke up this morning in your former home, and I'm glad to be back in Fort Worth, Texas, to put my head in my own bed tonight. But says things run smoothly, and I believe that's the case as you're the leadership there. Friday, November 15th, 11:32 a.m., many open parking spaces. Large truck was parked on scenic Oakhurst, doing work for the property right across the street. Wednesday, November 20th, 11:36 a.m., food distribution day, 0 cars on scenic Oakhurst, about 20 cars in the parking lot going through Food Line, very orderly with cones and signage on scenic Oakhurst. November 23rd, 11:28 a.m., 10 cars on scenic Oakhurst, at least 50 plus parking spaces in the lot. That was a service. Les Cody, you were leading that day. There were cars parked there. I think they parked there because it's easy and fast to get in and out. But I know I've talked to Aldridge and our police department about what that looks like too. Sunday, December 1st, 11:40 a.m., 13 cars on scenic Oakhurst plus 30 spaces in the parking lot. 4 people were out in vests directing traffic. I went by even today at 2:17 p.m. on my way back from the airport to get to our meeting at 3:30. It was set up for food distribution. There were no parking issues on the street at all. I think that everybody up here, all of my colleagues, 100% want to protect our neighborhoods. And I'll give a special shout out to Councilwoman Martinez. She's absolutely the proper person to be representing Oakhurst, as well as her thoughts and what she does. She's thoughtful, she's measured, and I know her heart's in the right place for her district and for Fort Worth as a whole. I'll say this, as I've got to look at this in a little different perspective. I'm the only real estate broker sitting on this dais. Doesn't make me special in any way. What I just say is I have to fully every day balance neighborhoods as well as development. I think my previous years of voting will show that too. And Allison, you said it best. Where are you, Allison? You said you've got to remove the emotions from this. And I heard a lot of emotional arguments. So I have to deal with facts, not feelings. And the facts that I heard were really 2 big buckets: parking and traffic. No doubt, at certain times of the day, the traffic is bad there. But we also have that in other parts of the city, traffic generators that exist. TCU in my district and Councilwoman Beck's district, UNT Health Science Center, Bowie House, Stockyards, Dickey's, Christ Chapel, for an example, is also something that has lots of traffic issues. We do have a residential parking permit program. I think it would be wise to maybe look at that. So the traffic and what the parking that's in the neighborhood, that would help. And I'm committed to help Councilwoman Martinez work with TPW to make sure it doesn't become a bigger issue there. The other thing I'll say, also, and I would ask the church to regularly make sure that you tell people where they can and cannot park. We have to do that with our own elementary school, my daughter's elementary school, with the synagogues that are around it, and people need constant reminding of where they can and can't park. I also heard about safety on the site and the neighborhood. Again, I'll give kudos to our Fort Worth Police Department and the men and women who every day are out there working on our behalf. And what I would ask too is that the church work with the neighborhood, look at safety and security and what that looks like as part of this. Here's the crux of where I stand tonight, and this isn't about religious use, this isn't even about the use of the property, but we have to give some sort of relevancy or consistency to our development community. And what I mean is that we have development standards. We've been briefed about what a site plan, this is not a zoning change, it's a site plan amendment, site plan that's been in place for over 2 decades. We had nothing to do with that up here. It fits within the rules, and what we can have a conversation is if those rules need to be changed or addressed, that's something we should consider too, working with our development community. I'm not sure how this vote's going to go tonight, but I do hope that the neighborhood and church will work together civilly to make sure that we address the problems, the property owners. And again, I'm happy to work alongside Councilwoman Martinez as you address those needs in the community too, make sure that they get the resources that they need.
Thank you. Councilmember Hill?
First of all, I want to compliment Councilwoman Martinez because you have done an excellent job of working with both parties. I'm looking at this case and the legality of it. Mercy Culture does have a legal right under the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act to build a shelter for human trafficking survivors on their property. I've done the same due diligence, and after careful consideration with city staff, legal, and among my council colleagues, I do believe the applicant should be allowed to build the shelter since the primary use is church-related and is not subject to zoning and landmarking laws that substantially burden the religious exercise of the churches. While I will vote for it, I'm going to reiterate what my fellow councilman said. You'll have to work together. I want to make sure that we're respectful of each other's property, especially the parking situation. Public safety must remain a top priority. I've heard that several times tonight, but I want to make sure that we all understand that that really is a top priority for every single one of my council members as well. Every effort should be made to manage parking and traffic, and I trust the applicant will work collaboratively to ensure success benefits both on the mission and the surrounding community.
I'll say a few things and then make sure. Go ahead, please. That's okay.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to second the motion so we can have the motion on the dais. I do want to make several comments tonight. I appreciate, well, let me speak truthful. I don't appreciate everything I heard, but I appreciate everyone being here. There's a couple things I want to articulate, and I want to second the political stance. And I do think a lot of this has been politically driven. And I'll be honest with you that there has been threats made to this council for the far right to be even farther right. They have threatened to run candidates against the Republicans that sits on this dais, and that is a true fact. To see Sheriff Wayborn, Waybay, whatever his name is, articulate his support even shows the position. And I will tell you this, and it is very known within Fort Worth, within Texas, and nationally, when you set a line, you get all the way up to the line, and then what they do, they move the line a little bit farther. And so why I sit here, and a couple of speakers pointed at me, called my pastoralship out, and X, Y, and Z, bullying tactics to try to force someone to vote on your side does not make this vote any easier. And I will tell you that this council should support community. When we got on council, one of the first hardest decisions that we had to make was the redistricting decision. And during the redistricting process, the very first neighborhood that came out was Riverside Alliance, Oakhurst, it was Riverside United, and Carter Riverside. Mayor Parker and others said, we must do what the community have asked us to do and put them together. They were separate from 3 different districts. We did that because we listened to the community. Earlier today, this meeting was supposed to start at 6, and it started at 7:30 because so many people came out to talk about who should be the next city manager. We had over 184 petitions signed from community aspects saying they wanted the process to be delayed. You articulated you had 384 petitions signed today from community leaders. I am convinced tonight, I've been convinced prior to, that this council don't give a damn about the community. They don't care about the people who live, work, and pay the tax dollars. And I cannot stand for that. I care about the community. My support for this vote tonight is going to be simply because of the 1-6 steps that articulate the site plan. This should have been a zoning change, but the zoning change was changed or allowed to do a site plan because it was directed by this council, because it'll be an easier vote and it wouldn't be political. I call that crap. I'm going to tell you what it is. I'm not going to lie to you. That's bull crap. You guys have made a very good point tonight about traffic. You talked about the 6 points. I believe you. I understand you. And if one of you guys tonight that has one of those green signs, bring me that green sign, please. Bring one of those green signs. Because I'm going to let you know that if nobody else on this council is going to stand with Oakhurst, Councilman Chris Nettles wills.
Larsdorf.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I can certainly appreciate the position Councilmember Martinez is in. I think she has done a great job of speaking with both the applicant and the neighborhood. And for once, my colleague, Councilman Nettles, is actually correct, too, in that this has become political, which is sad. I don't want to violate any ethics and discuss what we discussed during executive sessions, but some colleagues made it quite clear that this is political with their attack on the actual church and their political leanings, and made it be known that that was the main reason behind their feelings. So I agree, it has become political. I've received hundreds of emails from both sides. I have got what some could perceive as threats from actually both sides. In fact, one side even told me that I was afraid of lawsuits, I was afraid of a church, or I was afraid of something else. Well, if anyone who knows my background knows I've fought in Iraq and fought in Afghanistan, nearly lost my life numerous times, and once was on the wrong end of a grenade. I can tell you I am not afraid of a church. I am not afraid of any individuals of a church. I'm not afraid of a neighborhood, no matter how old they may be, nor am I afraid of any attorneys. The decisions I make at the dais will be for the reasons, either whether it's legality reasons, or it's the right reason, or it's what my constituents elected me to make in good faith. Has nothing to do with threats. So I just want to make sure that's clear and that's out there. So, Mayor, thank you.
Well, it's been a long night. Before I give the remarks that I prepared personally, I want to first just take a minute of appreciation. This city is almost 1 million people. We are the fastest growing city. We talk about that a lot. But how fortunate we are to have this many people that are willing to stay at a city council meeting until past 11 o'clock at night because they love their city. And I really do think that there may be a lot of disagreement and hurt hearts tonight in the room, but I believe every single individual that has taken the time to stay here loves this community. And I have to disagree with Councilmember Nettles. I don't agree at all. Everybody on this dais loves their neighborhoods and they love their community members. They would not sacrifice time from their families, time from their other professional endeavors to serve on this dais. It just is not worth it if you didn't love Fort Worth with all your heart. I have also had the opportunity to meet with both the Oakhurst neighborhood. Thank you very much for the time, both to Allison and Catherine on behalf of your neighborhood. I've also had the opportunity to meet with Mercy Culture and their leadership. I think it is important to note, as a fellow attorney, oftentimes we get a bad rap, but I think in this situation, the attorneys that have represented all sides, that includes Allison, that includes Kyle, that includes Trey and Melinda on the city side, have shined brightly. This is a very complicated legal situation that the city finds ourselves in, and I quite frankly think we're going to find ourselves in it more often. We actually did tonight with 2 different zoning cases, both the Alta Mesa Church of Christ and the Buddhist Temple in District 5. Maybe not apples to apples in some eyes, but in my legal mind, they're very similar cases. Mercy Culture has been called to minister and build a place of healing for the victims of human trafficking who have been exploited and terrorized in the most egregious of ways. And to the victims tonight that were willing to speak, all I can say is God bless you. I'm thankful that they have chosen, that Mercy Culture has chosen to work on behalf of these vulnerable victims and encourage the justice reform to work alongside the dozens of other organizations, and there are dozens right here in Tarrant County, the other church communities, nonprofits, some of which have been mentioned, and law enforcement agencies, most notably including our own Fort Worth Police Department, to integrate their services into the fabric of work already occurring in Fort Worth and Tarrant County. Most notably is the Tarrant County Five Stones Task Force, a collaboration that has received national recognition for collaborative efforts to end domestic minor sex trafficking in Tarrant County. I mention these things not because I have any legal authority to implore you to do so, but because I have firsthand gotten to work with them and know their hearts and their discipline, and I do believe they're worth working with. To my Oakhurst neighbors, and quite frankly, my very favorite park to take my children to in the entire city of Fort Worth. You are community members who are understandably concerned with the density, with parking, and overall impact to your beautiful homes and ultimately to your quality of life. I know this neighborhood and the residents there to be excellent neighbors, to be men and women of God, to be community leaders, to be committed volunteers to making Fort Worth a vibrant and loving community. I know in talking with you, I have seen it firsthand. You have been incredibly perplexed and offended, in tears and concern at the use of language and overall treatment you have received over the last few years. Even at times, we've heard extremes being called devils and warlocks. I know you've expressed your concerns simply because you love your homes, you love your neighborhoods, and you ultimately love the city of Fort Worth. As a policy matter, let me be clear. I strongly believe that the religious liberty rights of religious institutions are well established in federal and state law. Government at any level has no place telling any religious institution how they are permitted to live out their beliefs, especially on their own property they own. I might note we mentioned not one question to the temple this evening in District 5 as they built over 100 stupas on their property. Additionally, if this site plan case were to be denied, this is my own personal opinion, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the rest of this body, I strongly believe it will result in prolonged litigation, particularly related to RLUIPA, and in the end, legal precedent demonstrates the law is on the side of Mercy Culture, and all religious institutions for that matter. And the city most likely would lose this case and importantly cost taxpayers potentially millions of dollars in unnecessary litigation costs. Mercy Culture has every legal right to build this facility, so I will vote in support of the site plan amendment. Scripture commands us to love our neighbor. You can shake your head, Chris Nettles, but I've given you the time tonight.
Don't call me
Don't
out like
interrupt
that.
me.
Don't call my name out
In
like
both
that.
Mark and
'Cause
Leviticus,
I didn't see no when you was smirking over there
commend
when I was
Mercy
talking.
Culture to seeking to live out this command by caring for victims of sex trafficking. Please, I implore you to make amends with Oakhurst. They are wonderful people, and they deserve better than the way things have gone to this date. They truly do. I believe this commandment truly does apply to our neighbors, all of them in the most literal sense. If this measure passes, and like my colleagues, I have no idea where the rest of my colleagues are on this item tonight. Again, I strongly encourage church leaders to love their actual neighbors and take seriously the concerns expressed by Oakhurst, working in good faith to find solutions in these concerns. Each of my 10 other council colleagues has gone through their own decision-making process to determine how they will vote tonight. Please be respectful of their decision. District 11 is led by a woman of incredible integrity, my colleague, Councilwoman Jeanette Martinez. She has been elected to represent all residents of District 11, and I especially respect her decision and her very thoughtful approach she's made in this particular zoning case, and quite frankly, in everything she does on this city council and this dais. That's the conclusion of my remarks, and I'll yield any additional time to Councilmember Martinez before we vote. Thank you. Council, we have a motion and a second to deny SP 24013. Please vote. Motion to deny fails. For legal clarity, is there an alternate motion, council? Is there an alternate motion, council? I'll make the motion. Thank you. Motion to approve SP 24013. Councilmember Larsdorf, do I have a second? Got a motion and a second from Councilmember Vivens. Please vote. Motion carries. Motion passes.
Mayor, that concludes all of the action items. We are adjourned at 11:30.